It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Sunday, October 12th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Obviously, large focus today is going to be on the reality of the ceasefire, or the lack thereof, and what's going on, and how frustratingly consistent this has been from the very beginning. But for those that have been following this conversation, I argue you didn't need me to tell you that. But there's a lot more going on around this that I think is very important to tie in. But we're going to go through this in fact, I'm going to start with a point that I think is really important right now in the conversation. That's pretty how I titled the show in regard to the ISIS-linked gangs. But I'm going to start with some other things that I think are important to sort of set the table before we get into the ceasefire conversation. But I'm going to start with that so you don't miss that, because it's just wild what some of these propagandists are doing right now. Clearly, in my mind, planning it this way. But there's a lot of other things that I want to make sure we go over, including, like usual, the influence of the, part of the two-party illusion, the propaganda, media control, but the partisan mainstream alternative media part of how that's playing out today. And I think a few other things that I wanted to include that I think are just important to lay out and really, I think 4 or 5 important points that are sort of just two-party illusion. I think at this point, people who support Donald Trump and this current administration being misled about what they're really doing. Don't ever take that as a partisan point. It's about the power structure lying to the people who support them most, whether that's Biden and COVID, or Trump and COVID, or Bush and war on terror, wherever you look, whatever side, whatever partisan game, people being misled for the interest of the power structure, for the government, for the control over your life. But before I get into it all, I think what I've noticed a lot in the last couple of days, I keep getting this similar kind of, you could argue, people who think this. I tend to see this as sort of a manipulative thing or a bot or something like that, but you never know. They could be parroting something they saw, but getting the same kind of thing like, oh, you're such a broken record. Oh, you're just saying the same things over and over. Maybe, but whatever I'm doing, what I'm discussing is always what I believe is important, from the heart, what I believe in, what I think is important with the source material. But my point is, even if you think that, or even if that may be the case, I'm going to go with what I believe, what I think. I'm guided by something beyond just what's in the headlines and even what everybody else thinks and what you guys want me to cover. I consider all these things, but you guys know I go with what I think is most important. And what's interesting is during COVID, what did we talk about? The first few months, even 6 months. Oh my God, you're still talking about COVID-19. I can't believe that. We all know how that turned out. You're still talking about Epstein. Very similar how this always tends to work. Right now, I'm getting that because I think a lot of people are trying to push certain people away from, I think the whole fake, we got the ceasefire, the war's over, we won kind of movement. That same thing with Trump when he got elected. We won, it's over. Everybody stopped caring about everything, which didn't happen. But in this case, we saw that, and they were really trying to push that in, and we could prove they were still bombing when they said that. And I'll go over that today. But I think there was an effort to try to just, force this back into the where it was before, which I don't think they realize yet is not possible. There's no going back to the lies that were controlling the Zionist under the reality of what Zionism is in the world. But I just want to point that out as it's interesting so let's just say talking about Israel, for example. I laughed when somebody said that to me earlier, because I'm thinking, okay, well, what should I just lie to you next time to mix it up? Or what are you expecting from me? If Israel continues to do these things, I'm going to continue to say, look at what Israel's doing, or every other thing we talk about. So it's funny that the broken record, like with COVID, is just continuing to look at what they're still doing. Look at how much we can prove that. But as well as those that follow this platform, that the headline, represents what, 20% of the entire show, if that. And it can be a really long focus on a really important thing, but I can't put everything in the title. So usually you recognize people who make those claims. It's clear that they don't even actually watch the show. In any case, what I'm trying to get across is that don't be swayed by even genuinely what everybody else thinks and says and what they're doing. Let your principles and your integrity and what you believe in your heart and what, your instincts guide you, and question all of it and wait for facts and important information. But overall, I think we all sense that something very large is happening. And the way that these power structures are grappling, floundering, I mean, in really obvious ways all across the world. Some of them starting to kind of shift sides and call out what Israel's doing. We're watching something very large take place. And I don't even know if we truly grasp how large that is. But today, let's get into the focus of this development, the part of the story, that I think, again, the technocratic side of it, the Zionist side, the globalist side, all these things in my mind are all connected in the one kind of larger nebulous agenda. That doesn't mean that everybody within it is all thinking the same thing. And everybody politically, presidents, congressmen, individual people online have their own personal agenda. But recognize that it's pretty easy to see that these things are interconnected, even if it's just that they all recognize that if they work alongside, they can gain more power or influence. But the bottom line is it's very obvious that what's kind of unraveling is so central to the lies we're told, to the history we're taught, to just everything we've talked about. So again, the ceasefire part of it is, I think, very relevant, not only because it shows you that they're obviously continuing to do this, they had no intention of actually stopping this, but that this was, I mean, let's put it this way to kind of cap off the beginning, is that the United States government has every possible tool to stop this from happening. You could argue others, the UK even probably has a lot of influence on this, but from an American perspective, it's quite obvious that the US government, if they wanted to, could stop this instantaneously, and they don't. Yet, as we all see it, as even the Republicans are starting to make this more, and yet they keep going. There's just no misunderstanding that. You can try to define it, and what you're seeing is influence over policy. You're seeing the U.S. government take action that's to their detriment, even amongst their constituents, for a foreign power. Now, you can discuss why, again, Epstein, blackmail, but you can't deny what we're looking at. So watch as they continue to support what's happening. And if we see, let's say, Donald Trump or even the next president finally switch and shift, that in my opinion will mark a very massive change in the way we've seen governance exist in this world, in this country, most importantly, for a very long time. But the parts that I was going to start with, that I don't want you guys to miss, this is going on right now. Now, I titled this today that they, as every other time before it, Israeli government had no intention of even beginning a ceasefire, let alone upholding that. And the point was, as we already been reporting, the ISIS-linked gangs, this was covered by Haaretz. This is a very real, open, public conversation from, even from within the Knesset, from within their government, openly discussing and debating whether it was okay to work with these ISIS-linked elements. Or, as we probably all should know if you watch this show, just the fact that the U.S. and Israel governments are absolutely, without question, supporting, funding, working alongside ISIS al-Qaeda elements. Like you can quite literally prove to yourself in Syria. There's just no debating this anymore, and there really never was before. Now it's just even more conspicuous. So knowing that, understanding the GHF, the humanitarian foundation group that they were working, that those were ISIS-linked gangs. If you go back a step further, you can prove that those gangs they were working with were the very central reason, and by design, that the food process was being so manipulated. And there's other aspects to it, just them not letting trucks through, any number of things. This was important to recognize that the stuff that did get through was seized on after the crossing by these ISIS-linked gangs that they were working with and have been long before this. We've reported all this. These things just don't break through. And then those groups would either steal it, use it coercively, sell it at incredibly higher prices, and all of that we blamed on Hamas. So now, and after the Humanitarian Foundation, where they were witnessed, watched, documented, sniping children, sexually abusing people seeking food. This was all very openly covered. Now we're at a point where we were in the midst of potentially seeing another ceasefire. And remember, this has been going on throughout all the rest of it too. And so what seemed to happen different this time was with Israel decided to sort of try to make a transition into letting these groups continue their genocide to make it as simple as possible. We'll go through all this in depth. I'm just opening with this for a clear reason you'll see. And so this is an article from Haaretz in June of 2025, talking about this very conversation. What's wrong with that? How Israel trained and armed an ISIS-linked Gazan militia. Not Hamas, not random Palestinians, a specific group of ISIS-linked people in Gaza they used to blame everything on and pretend it's Hamas and to control and, basically outsource what they do, like what they even do with the Palestinian Authority, by the way. So keeping this in mind, and as well as the fact that in Syria, this is 2024, we covered this. What were we saying then? literally ISIS members with ISIS patches. And you could take these images and reverse image them. Look for where they came from. They were after the moment that the Jilani terrorists were allowed to take over all of Syria. And once they were done, as the title reads, as Israel further occupies Syria, Western-backed ISIS patch-wearing terrorists begin execution. There's live videos. So all of this is undeniable. So this brings us to where, as of yesterday, and I will reference Syrian Girl, by the way, this is where I saw it first. This guy, Mayor Tusi, who I'm not familiar with, founder of Tusi TV official geopolitical news channel, he says, referencing, by the way, Visor Guide 24, which is it's an intelligence asset, guys. This is not a real news channel. They get caught constantly sharing false information, distorted and dishonest content. And people like Elon Musk will share them regardless. So same with Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, reflexively share it. Okay. This says Hamas returns to the areas of Gaza, Israel with withdrawn. Hamas returns to the areas of Gaza Israel has withdrawn from and starts rounding up people. It's not what's happening, guys. And this guy says a lot of Gazans will get murdered over the next few days by Hamas, just literally setting this up. As of right now, here's where this is how this is going down. These are ISIS-linked gangs that we can prove are being facilitated through Israel. This guy, by the way, who is seemingly one of the people acting like, because we're not jumping up and cheering for something that's not even happening after those people just committed genocide. Somehow this is the Dinesh D'Souza guy acting like people who we shouldn't be cheering because, again, let's make the point that if these people, which they did, just committed genocide for a year and a half, Donald Trump part of it, Biden part of it, the U.S. government, and let's just say they ended everything today and literally gave everything Palestinians wanted to them. Are we supposed to cheer them for doing what they were supposed to do in the beginning, despite the genocide? It's insane logic. It's not logic at all. They're trying to distort the reality. So he's been doing that. He comes out today and says, Hamas gets ready to execute 3 dissidents. This is the group that Tucker Carlson insists is a political movement. They're talking about Hamas. So Dinesh, are you in Gaza? Can you confirm that these are Hamas members? Or are you just saying Hamas because anybody there that's with a gun must be Hamas? I mean, it's just lazy. I wouldn't even call it journalism. Can anyone give an explanation for why a smart guy like Tucker, so immediately kicking it off to go after Tucker, make fun of his comments? These are not Hamas members. And the reality of this is very easily done. And we'll go over this as we get through it. Pay attention to who's not sharing or talking about this, as Brandon Tatum. Abu Bakr Abed, a journalist, says this is an old video. First of all, recognize that. And this is still point. These are the groups we've been talking about. This goes back to well before October 7th, but very much so after that. So not a new video, still covering the people that are not Hamas, but it says it was before the ceasefire. Secondly, these are the collaborators with Israel and caused unmatched suffering for Palestinians. Stop the propaganda and lies. Why can't you live without lying? Okay. Now, I'm not telling you to blindly trust this person either. But I want you to think about how obvious this is and see how the construct has been set up from the very beginning. And their Israeli media are literally telling you that they are working with these people. Read the article. It's not hard to understand. This is the very guy. Actually, I'll grab this one too. An interview on this exact topic, also demonstrating our value, by the way, since we were talking about this along with plenty of others like Ryan Grimm and Dropsite News. This is from June 2025. What's next for the U.S., Israel, and Iran? And we discussed exactly this topic, the ISIS-linked gangs, that guy in particular, with the GHF and the lie of the food program. We proved it then. Include that one for you as well. So the point is, these guys are the ones they're talking about. They're reporting on these people literally being like, and they're pointing the food truck hijacks and everything we're talking about. And that's not just because it's all being dumped on a possibility. These are easily identifiable points that we've been proving for months and well before that. So keeping this in mind, keeping them in mind that they were literally setting this up to be like, get ready for all of them to die. And now we start seeing these groups, and not because of this video, mind you, because this is what we can hear reports of. And they're trying to grab a video that's old to make the case because this is coordinated. I don't know whether Dinesh is aware he's being used or legitimately just propagandizing for Zionism. I don't know. But we must understand how important this is right now for them because they've lost control of the narrative. They are desperately trying to regain some level of control to be able to just shove this thing over the edge into where we get to a point where we don't have any control of the narrative anyway. You know, technocracy, whatever you think is coming. Now, keeping this in mind, we're going to come back to that as a larger conversation. Now, I wanted to start with something just to give a shout out to somebody who needs your help. And before we, and what we're going to get into to start is going to be some important conversation around, I guess, just a rapid fire reality of lies being spun by the government and why those things might be happening. And from there, talking about how these things overlap with coordinated influence of the conservative movement. But, as always, just people out there with influence and Israel trying to control their view, and how that overlaps with what's currently happening in the framing from both sides of the media paradigm. How dare Obama not praise Trump's ceasefire that's not happening, says CNN. Yeah, yay, CNN's on our side. We're winning. We'll get to that. Now, Zoe has been doing outstanding work. We've interviewed her many times. She did a 2-part series. Here's part 1 for the Last American Vagabond, and plenty of other content out there. My Life in the Thrill Kill Medical Cult by Zoe Smith. Now, I wanted to shout this out for a reason, because a lot of people in this field who I argue are doing the right things for the right reasons. She's one of them. Going at this the way that, honestly trying to break these things down in contentious information that will never make its way through the mainstream media field in any content. Largely books is what I'm talking about, but really anywhere. She put her life into this, into writing the books, into covering the information, whistleblowing about the reality of the medical field at a time well before, right in the midst of what's going on in COVID-19, mind you. And so since then, she's been getting attacked like a lot of us have, but to a severe degree. She was recently manipulated by the police. Whether that's related or not, you can decide for yourself. The long story short is that she is somebody out there fighting for you. If you have it in there to support her in any way, here's her information. I've actually downloaded this on the website, on the server. So the link here will be in the show notes. It's a TLAV link. It'll have if you wanted to use the barcode, I recommend using she has her Venmo link right there, or the name you can search. Just show her some support, guys. I rarely do that from, in general with the TLAV audience, but this is somebody who's a part of our circle. She's a part of our she writes for TLAV. She's been doing a lot of great work for a long time. So if you can find a way to help her, please do. She deserves it. And we'll be talking about this more. Just supporting her work, but also just keeping you updated on her trials and tribulations of, doing the right thing. And I'll include this link, by the way, if you guys can check this out. Now let's start with some double standards, hypocrisy, lies from rapid fire position of just the two-party illusion, but currently the Trump administration. You might have seen this. This has to do with the Second Amendment. Now, this is going to be very quick. Individual points that I think are very relevant in a larger sense. This one, I wasn't even sure about, to be honest, because at first saw it, I felt like it was sort of being misrepresented. And in a way it is in some cases. Quick point is that ultimately Pam Bondi has a bad track record when it comes, as I'll let this guy explain for you, the National Association for Gun Rights. From a Republican perspective, I'll let him discuss this himself, just briefly. The part of it is that recently she allowed a ruling, and I'll let him explain it. And I'll, in fact, even have the link, I think, or the image down here. Yeah, here we go. You can read all through this. That basically, as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back, why they put this video out, calling for her to be fired, is allowed this ruling to basically allow in an abstract way I guess either the access to lists or making of lists of people in these Second Amendment groups. Now, again, like I said, it's not as on the nose as, let's just say, like gun laws or confiscation, or even making a list of her own, for example. But it's still important. And I'll let him say this for himself. Now, I agree with this, and it's not just her. It's a lot of this, as he calls it, a death by 1,000 cuts. It's the kind of way they do this today, knowing, well, it's hard to say that today when you've got things like Stargate and mRNA platforms in the midst of a world where they told you those would go away. My point is that usually it's slow roll, right? So you don't get too upset. Oh, well, there's a reason for that, and so on. Here's what he had to say about this, as this is the National Association of Gun Rights president, Dudley Brown, breaking down why he made the decision to call for her to be fired.
Our National Association for Gun Rights is calling for Attorney General Pam Bondi to be fired. That's a tall order, and that may catch some of you off guard, but allow me to make the case plainly. Like many, we had severe reservations about the nomination of Pam Bondi. She didn't have a record of anything so extreme as supporting assault weapons bans, but she did have a tendency that I view a bit more pernicious. You know the phrase, death by 1,000 cuts? Well, Pam Bondi has held that knife more than a few times in her political career, and it's always the cuts from a supposed friend that hurt the most. When a Democrat stumps for full-blown confiscation, you and I at least know where they stand and what the threat level is if they were to take power. What is often more dangerous is when you deal with Republicans, particularly the kind who care more about image and polls than you do about restoring God-given rights. Make no mistake, I'm not saying Bondi is cut from the same cloth as Feinstein or Schumer. She's clearly better than whomever would have been in her place had Kamala Harris been elected.
I can't, you know what kills me? Who knows if he even believes that? But it's like the requisite, I'm not the other side kind of tap dance. Is that true? Who knows? I think they're all the same, quite frankly. I think literally as we watch this go forward, it's hard to even argue that the other side would have been worse. It would have just been with some woke flair of the left side. End of the day, the agenda seems to be the exact same as people like Jason Bassler, myself, the IMA, we were all talking about. But it's interesting that he has to go, well, I'm not saying she's like them, but this is bad. But what's weird is he's almost saying that it's worse. Like that it's because it's more obvious with them. She's doing it in a slow, surreptitious kind of Yeah. So, but what's the point? It's the same outcome. That's what he's trying to highlight here.
But is that the only standard by which we should judge? If that's the case, we should just pack this whole thing up because the bar is so low that we would never be able to mount a grievance. But gun owners didn't show up at the polls to get some slightly better than complete destruction of their fundamental rights. We were promised not simply a casual defense that the Republican Party has begrudgingly granted us over the years. We demanded and were promised real, tangible reforms and a reversal of decades of abuse. Some in our circle have been disappointed with Bondi over what they perceive as a lack of positive action. They're saying that the goal is unguarded and she won't make a strike. But it's much worse than over-promising or under-delivering. She's actively been playing goalie for the other side.
See, now that's that's almost worse, arguably, right? That you're essentially in a very, I don't know, in other words, surreptitious, like just secretly behind the scenes working to help the other side. But again, if you're smart enough to see beyond the obvious two-party illusion today, you'll just recognize that what she's doing is using the two-party division to help the power structure take your rights away, which is what both sides do every single day, that from what I can tell.
Great lengths behind the scenes to protect state power at the expense of your Second Amendment rights. And that is far more egregious than disappointing. That is active sabotage.
Right.
I refuse to believe this is the best we can get. This year was and still is the greatest opportunity for gun owners in my lifetime. And that opportunity is being woefully squandered in real time right before our eyes.
I mean, you could argue that it's the best opportunity, but that's only framed on the idea that somehow Trump and their team are more amenable to the idea that I don't see that anywhere. I see a lot of words. I see a lot of bluster and claims. They love to fill your ears with all the things you want to hear, guys. Most any politician, they're just a special kind of ridiculous today. I don't really know why exactly. I could give you my feelings on it, but we all see it. There's something very bombastic about what's going on today. Maybe it's just that they're out. I mean, who knows? You could decide for yourself. But to me, you get it. It's just, I think it's very clear that this is, I would rather somebody come in front of you and say, here's what we're going to do, as opposed to them acting like we're helping you and secretly doing that to the same degree, right? Wouldn't you rather at least know what you're confronting? I would.
If you don't believe me or you think that I'm being unfair, let me walk through her record before her nomination, what she has done since, and then you be the judge. But be prepared. This is a very long list.
And I bet you most conservatives have no idea or don't frankly care because Trump said you're supposed to support her. So that's the order. Don't counter signal the leader. So what a lot of them think, I believe it's the minority, and I believe those are the team sport politics screamers at the top, but they've got the most reach and influence. I don't believe the majority, though.
The straw that broke the camel's back came this week when she convinced a federal judge to demand the member lists of two national Second Amendment advocacy organizations.
Right. So essentially the way I frame this is, that's a list. They demanded those, which they're compiling a list of their own. That's how I would view that. Right. But that's just my bottom line is that's a line that's crossed for people that are, rightly believe in the Constitution and your privacy and the overlapping of the Second Amendment.
But more on that in a moment. Let's start with her record as Florida's Attorney General so we can kind of establish a pattern.
Now, I'll let you watch the rest of this. The bottom line, if you can suss it out, is that it's not a good track record. And she's clearly done a lot of things in the past that are counter to your constitutional rights. By the way, it's not a secret that Trump has a very similar mindset.
the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system. Because a lot of times by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court, to get the due process procedures. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
Says the person who has either no understanding of how the Constitution works or who doesn't care about it. Simple. Now, yeah, I know he's talking about mentally handicapped. It's irrelevant. If you're the person who's suddenly going, but asterisk allows you to ignore it, then you're the same thing you made fun of on the left. Shall not be infringed doesn't say but pathogen. Remember all that? It's the same thing. And so what's he arguing right here? It takes too long, so let's ignore their rights. Isn't that exactly what we heard with the immigration conversation? Is that exactly what I could make the point everything he's gone over, guys. But again, I believe most conservatives are somewhere aware of this, are uncomfortable by it, and hope to God that he's got some longer plan that will work out for the benefit of the Constitution. Stop doing that. Just acknowledge that it's wrong, regardless of whether it ends up being okay. That's the very Machiavellian ends justify the means. It's not the reality of where we are, frankly, and I think you know somewhere inside that that's not really how it's going to end up. So, make sure I didn't. Oh, sorry, that was just the next tweet below it. Yeah, just so then he includes he's got the thread down here with all the source material to get, if you want to dive into it, the links and where it comes from. Now, another one is in finance. I think it's important to point this out. I hadn't commented on this, and I honestly, because it's not, unless I found more about it, like something like this, for example, the fact that the crypto market had a massive drop, it wasn't really like, for me, what I like to report on when it comes to news is not like, hey, there's a storm today. That's news, right? But it's not like, it's just look, there's a storm. Except in our world where it's suddenly like a 3-week coverage of how crazy the storm, look at how bad, that's just the same kind of deal. My point is that's crazy and it's reportable because of how bad it was, but was there more to the story? And if not, if it's just a random thing, I don't think that's important for this show. But I did have a sense that, if I put it aside for a very clear reason. More than this kind of thing, but also just, we see the crypto markets. We see the World Liberty Financial with Pakistan and all. There's a lot of weirdness there. And obviously, like a lot of people, I said, okay, they probably just stole a lot of money right there. Not, stole, you could argue that word, but just, manipulated the markets like they do with stock market, the same thing, right? Now, as Menjo points out, Trump accidentally, his opinion, triggered the biggest crypto crash ever. And I think you should very much put accidentally in big quotes there. But it says, or did they just F millions of people at once? And he says, remember what Putin advisor said? You should, because we talked about it on this show. The U.S. is plotting to erase $35 trillion of debt. This is exactly what Catherine's talking about, too. One side of it, they're lowering life expectancy to make up the trillions they're missing in regard to the unbalanced books. But at the same time, here's another way as they shove us into the technocratic panopticon transition to digital money that they could ultimately do something similar. And I argue there's different points to that same conversation, but it says 35 trillion. He said the U.S. He said this before this happened. Are they plotting to raise $35 trillion of debt by moving it into the crypto cloud, then devaluing it at the world's expense? This is identical to what Catherine said they're going to try to do. October 10th, today's decline officially marks the largest single-day liquidation in crypto history. $9 billion. Just like that. Now, that didn't just vanish, you understand. I mean, essentially it did to the world, but there's a manipulation going on here, and I absolutely believe that. What I found interesting about this is just the fact that now, of course, here's a way to look at it, obviously. Question this. Did Russia come out and make this statement because they were planning to do it? Yeah, that's a very valid question. The only difference, though, is there is clearly evidence. Every government in the world seems to be getting involved, but to the same degree that you see Trump's immediate circle doing so, not that I can see. So that's why the evidence slants that direction, but we don't know for sure. Very much ask the question whether maybe they're working together. That would even be more likely to me when you break down how things have gone over the past. Any sense, this is an interesting time where we're all on guard for the digital transformation, and this kind of thing happens. You want my personal opinion? I'm not a financial investor. Hodl. Believe it, because every time I've been in this in a long time, and the reality is every time you see this, people sell and they jump away. I think that's the design. Get you out of the way, consolidate everything, and then there's, they don't want the average people to benefit by their shenanigans, in my opinion. But, you may lose a lot in the meantime. That's why most people, the game is not to, I'm not going to get into all that. The bottom line, though, is that I do think that this is very manipulative. And I think that the Trump administration with larger powers is absolutely, my opinion, behind this kind of fluctuation. Now, I'm not saying Trump personally, but I just mean the Palantir technocratic kind of swirling circle around him, I think, is very much involved with this. Catherine and I had a great interview. Trump, it's called Reverse Robin Hood. Why has Trump become anti-capitalist? Many points right in this opening section will relate to this. We talked about the FCC. We talked about Intel, TikTok, NVIDIA. I mean, there's like endless amount of examples. Her opinion is that he's the most anti-capitalist president in history. You can decide. You can call her wrong. She's the financial expert. I think the point is that it wasn't about one versus the other, like people kind of felt like the title was implying. It's about the reality that they're all deceiving you. Fascism, communism, the government as a whole is trying to seize control of remove the fact that they want to go back to feudalism. That's where I think we're going, techno-feudalism, quite frankly, and I'll even grab that for you. But I think that's the idea. Oh, that's the wrong one. Is to drive us back to that place. I've said that many times, right? It's a place where the centralized power is so strong that they don't care what you have to say. But on top of that, that even if you do have something to say, it won't be seen because you're in a digital panopticon. That's weird. Huh. Oh, I know what it was. There it is. Pronomos Capital. Very important thing to remember. I'm telling you, it's going to get... Whitney just put on a great article on Unlimited Hangout, by the way. And I want to share something with you, but I don't want to jump the gun a little bit. We have some good things coming your way, but she just put a great article that I'll probably touch on very soon. And it has to do with exactly the same thing, like the startup kind of Freedom City thing. Telling you guys, there's a very alarming reality around this. But Pronomos Capital and the rapid transition to techno-feudal state. That's the world they're building for us right now. Under the guise of, saving you from the other bad thing, whatever it is. Both sides will play the game. I'll include all these for you. But make sure you watch the interview with Catherine. I think it was very insightful. And my point again, though, is that they just lie to you guys. They play you off each other. They convince everybody that they're, fighting the power and ultimately leading us all in the same direction for all of their benefit. Now, in regard to other finances, let's not forget, right, that we're talking about so much. I mean, the financial manipulation is absolutely insane. You have an example right now overlapping this with the shutdown, which, hooray, I'm glad, regardless of the game. Like, first of all, can I just say how stupid it is that every single time, where are all the people like us that watch this stuff every time? Every time this happens, and I laugh about it. The refs shut it down, let it go. They play this game. As Massey points out, why do we have all of it consolidated into one massive bill we all have to argue about? So they can abuse it like this. So they can play the game and insert writers every 10 seconds about Israel. It's what's going on. Not always about Israel, but it's a manipulation game. The point is, how embarrassing for Vance or anybody else, a Schumer shutdown. It's both sides of the paradigm. You can't have a disagreement with one group. How stupid they think we are. Yes, clearly, I think they're using this to muscle in the things they want. It's the same exact difference from both sides. Let's just even say it's exactly what they're saying. And you got the left who has one thing they want, and they refuse to give it up unless you give it to them. Okay, fair. And they're holding this up. Okay, what are you doing? Saying, well, we don't want that thing, so we're going to hold it up until you say no. It's the exact same thing. They'll argue, well, the thing is bad for you, and they'll say, look, it's good for you. It's the same game, and it's so irritating. And I think everybody knows this. Most importantly, the people who are out there going, Schumer, shut down. They know. They're not stupid. They just think you are. Please prove to them that you're not. That I see every day. It just kills me how stupid all this is, and yet we have to pretend like it's real because the Benny Johnsons and Jones of the world are out there screaming whatever they're told, and it makes people think the majority has this very small-minded opinion. The point, though, is that both sides always allow this, and they benefits both of them. And right now, look at what's happening. Yes, the left loves to go Trump bad and authoritarianism, but are they doing anything? Is anybody? No, never happens. Not left, not right. Is Pelosi in jail? No. Is Obama in jail? No. Comey, James? We'll find out. I highly doubt it. And I think the evidence already shows they know it wasn't going to happen. It's a game. So my point is that when this happens now, look at what Trump's doing. Look, I've got unilateral power. Now, why would they make Anyway, it's always constructed this way. What I'm going to make this point about now is that here's just a clip showing you that there's military personnel who are in lines for food because they're not getting paid. I mean, that's not even the point I'm getting at. It's the overall money situation about it. But I think it's interesting that it's the left's fault that it's happening. You're both allowing it to happen. And all it really shows you is that, I mean, look, all of this needs to go away, in my opinion. The money, people
Step
suffering
aside
for
here, there is quite a bit of military members and their families in line because of this government shutdown. We're in day 9 of it, and they're here for a food pantry. There's all sorts of food that is available, and I spoke with some military member spouses, and I spoke with some department heads here at the ASYMCA on why this is so important. What's the difference in the amount of people that you've seen from today to previously?
So when we first started coming, there definitely wasn't this amount of people. It was a lot, but it wasn't this amount to where it wrapped around the building.
Yeah, I mean, the point is obvious, is that so they're needing to do that because they don't have any money, or at least not at that moment. But shouldn't have a standing army. So, right? I mean, if people get dependent on these things, then they point to that dependency to rationalize why it should exist. It's not something that we should want. It's not liberty or freedom, in my opinion, but people will disagree. Anyway, the point is about the fact that it's happening and they want to blame each other. Well, if you cared about the military, then wouldn't you, the end of the day, the lie about the health care for immigrants, everything is usually based on some kind of a bluster or fabrication, because usually you can tell that at the end of the day, they both benefit from the continued manipulation of you. It's kind of this always game that we can see. But as he writes, Argentina got $20 billion this week, by the way. Right. So your military personnel can't feed themselves, but we're giving $20 billion to Argentina, or we're giving billions to Israel. That's the quick overarching point. They can sure as hell find money to give to people like this clown. This is Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, literally out singing at a rock concert because he's apparently also a rock star. These are ridiculous clowns. It's Donald Trump from his reality TV show. You could kind of go across the bar. You look at what we're transitioning to. And as David Icke points out, Trump's just bailed out this guy. $20 billion, a mate of Elon Musk, as he destroys the Argentina economy, because that's what's happening. And of course, the argument is he's fighting the deep state left. And so who cares if he destroys everything? Look at Bukele. He's fighting the deep state left. And that's why we remove civil liberties. You guys are literally cheerleading the deep state that you think you're fighting. But he says, make that for destroying the Argentina economy. Global economic stability is being dismantled to force everyone into poverty, dependency, and control. They don't want competent politicians in service to the population. They want morons who will follow the script. The world over, they've got them, right? Donald, Keir, right? Yes, obviously. But this is just embarrassing. This guy's literally performing a rock concert. And he's bad, by the way. Not that that matters. Now, another point around finances, Gunther Eagleman, of course, comes out and says, whatever they said is great because I'm a cheerleader. No, what he said was breaking, of course, because it's immediate. No, it's been reported 75 times a couple hours earlier, but breaking. He says President Trump just announced he has got an estimated $18 trillion in commitments and investments to America. This is huge. We're winning. Okay. The point, regardless of the fact that it seems to be inaccurate or completely untrue, as every other thing that every government, this is not Biden. You could argue he just doesn't know because he's senile, but said a lot of things that never actually happened or were not true. Same difference for Trump, guys. I think both of them lie to you all the time because they want to sell you on an idea. My point is that he made similar statements about all kinds of deals with foreign governments that didn't even exist. I could go down the list every single day from the many things that they scream about that are absolutely false. The point for me is not that he's saying things that are false, but that people like Guntherman come out and go, what he just said. Trump just said things. Breaking news. Everything just changed. No, he just said things. Breaking news. Politician lies. It's just wild to me that these people, and it could, who knows, maybe it'll turn out to be reality. 18 trillion, I highly doubt it. Now, what's funny about it is you read it, it turns out that most of these, or some of them, overlap with Biden's commitments from before, or are just outright misrepresenting the amount. Remember Doge and all the savings? Come on, guys. But what's funny is how often this happens. Here's an example. This is from, rare earth minerals. That's a conversation. We've been talking about that for a decade. Now China's saying we're going to restrict that, put some, what's funny is that Trump screams about that, even though it's almost exactly what he's doing with tariffs to control that situation. China's got the vast majority of them. I've said that for years. You knew this was coming. And that's, you're over there poking them in the eye every day, maybe if it's what actually is happening. But the point is that they did this and now they're direly in need of rare earth minerals. And I argue that's largely why we saw what happened with Bolivia. That's why I think we're seeing what's happening with Venezuela. That's why I think we're seeing this all over the world for rare earth minerals. Afghanistan, lithium, gold, oil on top of that. Lithium being one in regard to the AI, but also gold, also oil. But rare earth minerals being the AI importance, right? But this happens, right? He makes a big statement. Everyone freaks out because he's kind of following his direction. And he says, don't worry about China. It'll all be fine. Trump says China's Xi just had a bad moment. Okay, so breaking news. Trump just said everything's fine. We're all good now. No problem. We all win. Or he just said something. It's probably not even true. But the point is, go look. Watch as everyone's screaming like Benny Trump just said it's all fine. Breaking news. It's all good. You know, just think about how silly that is, that it gets parroted across and all we have is him saying something when politicians lie like they're breathing. That's the idea, and it's everywhere you look. Daniel McAdams says, this is what I call tyranny. Texas pays $1 billion, $1,405,468,510. Almost $1.5 billion in federal tax dollars for Israel's weapons. Texas, as the state government, you know, Abbott largely was the one that, you know, he's the one that passed all the BDS laws. $1.4 billion for federal out of your tax dollars to fund Israel's genocide. I mean, what are we talking about, guys? This is what everyone in the world can see. Okay, we have the reality of where it's coming from. And we already talked about this too, but Melnick here is calling it out. A huge portion of the chaos that you're seeing in the United States, and we're going to talk more about the ICE immigration overlap and Antifa, by the way. I wanted to do that today, but I didn't want this to be too long, is directly due to one man, Stephen Miller. Most of what's happening, an unelected political operator who by many reports has more authority than cabinet secretaries. He is superseding Rubio. That's been shown by many reports, including from directly the White House. This is, I think it was it Trump or I forget which one it was. I think it was Trump actually. Basically saying we're referring to Stephen, who is over Marco Rubio. Think about how wild that is. And what he is doing as an advisor is basically controlling the policy for a foreign government, in my opinion. He's a very, very open Zionist. What you have to understand is that, like we said with the ethics pledges and everything else, this is even like people like Musk and the rest didn't do that, but he's an advisor. And I think you really, let me put it this way. At the very least, ask yourself, be willing to entertain the idea, even if you think I'm crazy. Is it possible that Stephen Miller or anybody in that position could be put there by a foreign power? Or let's just even say a lobbyist group that has convinced Trump that they're working for him, who actually works for a foreign power. You could make it China if that makes you feel better, and ask yourself how likely that is today with what we're seeing if this guy was literally doing everything he could to make China better. And it says Stephen Miller has emerged as the key force behind efforts to expand Trump's authority, from sending troops into cities, accelerating deportations, to even marginal lethal strikes at sea. Miller's reach is extended into foreign policy as well. Think about that. While multiple current and foreign officials describe him as the leader, alongside Marco Rubio, of a counter-drug mission that has carried out lethal strikes in basically around Venezuela. It was Miller, not Hegseth, who led the internal push earlier the year to use the military to target drug cartels. Miller. Why? Because I think very obviously the international dynamic around the ocean and bombing them, maybe the flotilla and plenty of other things, is what Israel wanted. It's insane to me that we can see this plainly, and the people who should care the most seem to not care at all. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, coming out and saying the truth. I just think this is fascinating. I question her like I should do all of them, maybe more than some, but what if she says the correct thing, I'll share it, like I said about anybody. But I find this really interesting. Here's what she had to say. You think about it for yourself.
Costs have not come down. I myself can tell you my apartment here in Washington, D.C., the electricity bill is $100 more than it was last year, because you can look at your own bill and look at costs. Prices have not come down. That is a reality. People's wages have not gone up. That's another reality. And so Americans are continuing to have a very difficult time.
Right. Okay. Is she lying to you? I mean, look, put it this way. You guys can do the same thing, right? I think it's pretty collectively obvious that that's, you could argue it's, a rise until the tariffs come and we all succeed, whatever. At this moment, it's not happening. People are paying more. They're getting less. It's not new. Same thing with the last administration. Okay. That's pretty objectively clear. I think we're honest. We can agree with that. So Cat Turd says, first of all, Andrew Bates says, Marjorie Taylor Greene fact checked this White House lie earlier today. Prices have not come down. That this is a reality. People's wages have not gone up. That's what she's saying, as you heard. Cat Turd says, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Democrats' new superhero. Well, we already know from this person who's publicly said, even though it's true, don't say it because it hurts the team. Simply just saying, well, the truth you shouldn't say because it helps the other side. This is the largest driving factor of these absolute children with the largest influence in the room. You think that? I mean, look at David Icke's point about the morons in charge. It's the same point here. They want the least informed people with the loudest voice so nobody hears the information. God's Warrior USA. But there's a lot of these people, by the way, and I think this is the majority. I really appreciate this. Clearly, if you look at the count, this is a very strong Republican Trump supporter. And it says, this is the second post this person writes from a larger influencer account mocking her. He says, the person says, though I don't really care for her, what she is saying is true. My utilities have more than doubled. I'm shocked. Groceries aren't down. Homeowners insurance is up. Car insurance is up. Taxes are up. Health insurance is up. Rent is up. Prices for goods in all stores are up. Wages are not going up. She says, so tell me, are you upset that this may reflect on Trump and would rather cover it up than call it out? I love Trump, but I'm sure won't cover for things that need to be addressed. Guys, I stress this so often that I'm sure it frustrates people. I believe if you care to look broadly, this is the majority of conservatives. You could say 51% if you want. That's still the majority. I think that this is obvious because I think in general, left and right, most people aren't ridiculous, blind following, sycophant cheerleaders. They want a certain thing. They're willing to ignore certain things to maybe think their team can succeed. But at the end of the day, when you've got full crazy, full Zionist, these people won't take it. And they're calling out people like, even look at the engagement on this. Like, that's very low for his very, very, very large account. You need to look at the writing on the wall, guys. Trust me, people. Don't try, look for yourself, but just know that I think it's very easily provable that these people are not the majority and are losing influence every day. For things like this, by the way, this is the rapid response account, Trump sharing from his Truth Social, basically saying, I don't want to read the whole thing about DEI and what he did with the colleges, right? And Glenn Greenwald says, Trump says that the changes he is forcing private American universities to adopt, which it's so obvious this is a violation of any number of things. First and foremost, that we shouldn't have the funding from the government going to schools anyway. But overall, at the end of the day, because they're coercively using that and saying you have to say certain things or not because of it, this has been roundly upheld by the Supreme Court. Just like you did with the FCC, you're threatening action if they don't do something, and then that has to do with speech, then you're violating their rights. This is not hard to understand. You have people that have an interest in one side and try to pretend like they don't see how obvious it is. And he says, he's telling you that the changes he's forced on the universities to adopt are designed to prioritize merit and hard work before group identity. Except when you literally read the documents, it's obvious that's not true. As even Glenn has called it, DEI for Jewish people. He says, how are the new DEI programs he forced Brown University to adopt? Or here they are. See for yourselves. This is consistent with the claim, or if it is. And you can read through it. It's shockingly, it's very, basically, as he said, he's created a special class in this circumstance around everything is real, but around Jewish identity and the Holocaust and everything else. Whatever you think about it. That's not merit-based. You're clearly slanting in one direction. Whatever you think about how valid that is, they're just lying to you. And if you want to read the comments and recognize how many conservatives are very much seeing this, it's pretty clear. One quick thing I want you to note on the whole woke left, right, lie, everything. Here's just one of just about 100 I could have shown you if I didn't want to take more time. Oh, remember the USAID that supposedly closed down and no longer exists? Well, here's a new contract for, well, overall, almost $1 billion. And as of the 30th of last month, Donald Trump's administration gave $25 million for I guess the purpose of modification to the obligate additional funding, meaning not going to stop, which is obvious. And you can go down and see there's funding there. Well, that was zero, but the ongoing continuation. Remember how I told you that in the first place? And everyone was, trying to push back? That, it says zero. Well, my point was they did that because they weren't canceling it. It's continuing, like I kept trying to prove to everybody. And here you go. Now that you've stopped looking, there's $25 million for USAID to work with Credence Management Solutions. Whoever knows what that's even really about. This is my point. USAID is a regime change engine doing who God knows what in the world. There's one. Look it up for yourself if you care to look. Goes all the way until 2028. And my point to make clear again is that was funding that took place under Trump's current administration. Here's another one. Hey, look, USAID. Chemonics International goes until 2026. $7 billion. The amount right now, so one in May, one in August, one for $39 million. This one's for $326 million. What for? Look at that. HIV and AIDS. Remember all that big talk we had about the whole, male circumcision, which all those are still happening too? It's amazing what people will choose to ignore. If you're honest, you can look and see that they're still doing all the things they pretended were bad and weren't happy because it's an agenda. They just made you look away by the games they were playing with their shell game manipulation. USAID is still very much active, whether through State Department or not, and it's very much still funding the same kind of things it always has, if you just care to look. Donald Trump took a vaccine, because that's not shocking news, I guess. And what's hilarious is the way that people responded to this. Edward Dowd says two possibilities. He didn't get a real booster, or he's a dumb ASS. That's what Edward Dowd had to say. This is the president's own post where he literally says, in preparation for the upcoming travel, President Trump received a preventative health screening, immunizations, including annual influenza and updated COVID-19 booster. The ones they told you they weren't going to keep doing, even though we know for a fact that it did, because here's the actual documentation from August 27, 2025, 2026 COVID-19, mRNA, Pfizer vaccine, right there. Yeah, that's going. That's continuing. That's not stopping. And if you care to look into the rest of the information, the truth is that neither are the rest of them. All the lies they told you about that, I'll include the episode if you want to check it out. They really did pull a number on people with this one. But Trump admin leans into self-amplifying mRNA shots under the guise of ending mRNA. You can go through it if you care to look. It's a large conversation. The truth is they're still absolutely leaning into all of it. But okay, so Trump gets this, and I said, Donald Trump just claimed to get yet another COVID shot. And I didn't say claimed because that's the way to cover it. In 2025, the one all his blind supporters want you to believe he's somehow fighting to expose. That one. See, people like Julie Donuts doing their job come out and 158,000 followers for God knows why. People actually believe Donald Trump took a vaccine. Laughy face. Okay, do you have some kind of secret evidence that proved that he didn't? I'm not saying I know for sure. He could have lied about it, right? Because we're not children. We can consider that, unlike most partisans. But you're blindly going, you're so dumb that he said he took it. And so your take is he's fooling you somehow by allowing children, women, and everybody else to think that it's okay to take? Woo, he got you. He's playing the Democrats, even though tons of Republicans get these shots. I mean, what are we talking about? This is pure stupidity and blind assumption in a self-serving way. I don't know for sure, but this is the funny, well, I'll just say this first. As 5 times August writes, well, it doesn't matter whether Trump has taken the COVID shot or not again. Well, it does to a degree, because what matters is that he's still trying to influence the public to take it. And people like Julie know that, or they're not smart enough to be able to piece it together, but most seem to, and they ignore it because they feel like it makes them look wrong. It says he's never once had a bad thing to say about the beautiful thing that's injured or killed so many. Do you recognize that? How do you look past that over and over and over again? Well, here's what somebody's saying, and this is how they do. He goes, if you believe that Trump took a COVID shot, you clearly have no understanding of 5th generation warfare. I mean, so you're blindly assuming because you think you know what his agenda is? This is just childish naivety. And he goes, this is how bringing the COVID shot front and center. This is now bringing it front and center. This is the game like when he goes, Borla, come out here. And they go, boo. And they go, we got him. And then went on to make $1 billion deal with him, because got him, right? It says Fauci's on deck. Dark to light. These are QAnon nonsensical posts. Could it be right? Of course it could. Is it? Has it ever been? Most likely 99% no. This is insane to me. And I think these people might very well be manipulative like assets for all we know. I'm not saying I know that. What I'm saying is this agenda clearly is in their benefit to convince you to ignore what you're looking at because wink, wink, there's going to be an end. Trust the plan, guys. Even if it takes 75 years to maybe happen and then maybe not probably anyway. It's wild. So he took the shot, or he claimed he did, and allowing everyone else to think they're okay. And they all want to convince you that he's secretly playing 7D chess. I mean, even if you think that, are you actually arguing that it's okay with you that he would do that and allow other people to take it? To do what? To ultimately stop it? It's just this, it's confounding. Well, let's talk about certain things that I think are being flooded in the conversation right now more than ever to distract, but also recognize whether it's Pelosi or Obama. What do we keep getting? They're treasonous traitors, committing terrorism, and then nothing happens. Over and over and over. I want to see something happen. Even if it's just Democrats, if they're criminals, put them in jail. I want to see that. But we have to keep acknowledging that every time they come out and do things like this, where's the follow through? Just because they say things out loud and then Benny Johnson points to it does not make that real. Donald Trump says the Biden FBI placed 274 agents into January 6th crowd. We're back to this again. Yes. I'm not denying that. We all knew this. We've reported this for a year or more. Or even more than that, actually. Long time. Good. Do something. That's what Trump is saying. If this is so, now he's even watering it. Maybe it's not. We know it's so. And he says, a lot of very good people will be owed big apologies. What a scam. Do something. Who is he talking to? I mean, guys, take a second and think about this. Who the hell is Trump talking to? Is he not the president? Is he calling for some other government to act? What is he talking? See, he has the power. He doesn't need to post about this. He could have been day one going, Bondi, cash, do something about it. He's not. So when he posts things like this, he's pretending he wants action. He's feigning movement. And then Benny Johnson comes in and says, in late night post, President Trump says, they're placing the crowd, do something. He's pointing at it, going, Trump, the thing Trump said. Okay. So tomorrow, next year, okay, Benny, when nothing happens, can you add this to the list of the 17 other things you think? Nothing happens. Where's Obama? Where's Bill Clinton? Where's Gates? Why aren't they in jail? What about all the people you said stole Social Security information? Not a single person, mind you, let alone the Epstein list. But hey, he should do something. He's calling on himself and his administration. So, okay, let's just even say he accidentally posted the thing for Bondi. Maybe he's going, Bondi, do something. Okay, fair enough. When Bondi inevitably does not, well, they'll call for her to be arrested or her to be fired, which will probably be you're fired, move along, no criminal accountability. And then the cash will be the next one. Probably the line it'll go in. Overall, just to make you think that he cares and it was only that secret Democrat or whatever you call them when they leave. And nothing happens. Well, here's Kash Patel on the 11th. Our FBI is delivering results. I mean, come on, you can yell that all you want, bud. You can keep screaming that online. It doesn't make it any more real. He says in 7 months, 4 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives were captured. The same number the last administration got in 4 years. I mean, honestly, is that true? It's not even the point today. It's funny how often they just yell things on this platform and don't even turn out to be even remotely true. Or you find out that 2 of them were arrested before he got into power. Who knows? My point is not about whether that's the reality. And let's just even say he got 4 top wanted. Is that what we're even calling for? Is that what we think is supposed to be happening right now? Not the people that support him. Maybe you do. I think in a general sense, yes. But anyway, the point, this person goes, hey, less than 3 months until the statute of limitations expires on the January 6th Fedsurrection. Yeah, because they're not going to do anything about it, guys. They've known about this for a very long time. And Kash is trying to go, look at this. And everyone's going, we don't care. Where's the Epstein list? What about all of these different things you've been saying? Well, you're going to get a lot of this right now. This person, funny enough, this is a larger, 218,000 random account. It's kind of this Maggle Circle J, kind of just everyone's following each other and half of them are bots. It's the same thing on the left. But this person goes, whoops, January 6th was an op, showing this thing right here. Breaking news, everybody. The thing that I said, guys, old news. How long have we talked about this? This very same picture, the same guy who literally was part of a left-leaning group, who literally was on film going, we tricked them, we did it. You think they don't have that, guys? It's public information. It's all over their, they don't care. Especially don't care about the Azov movement being present, yelling things in Russian, that Israel's involved in. Nobody doesn't want to hear about that. The point is, this is coming out and it's getting all this reach and everyone's sharing it. But nothing's happening, and it never did in the first place. They're just repurposing things that were already present for new people to the conversation so they get distracted from what they're watching right now. That's how I read it. Same thing. Can you feel it? January 6th is starting to fall apart. That's long since happened. To anybody who cares to look at the information, they're just saying, yeah, it's an operation. Yes, we know. I get old news. Long story. Not just because I posted it. It's been publicly discussed. There's been people in front of Congress that have made these points. So again, other people posting the same thing. So you can see this repackaged sharing of the same things over and over on all these different accounts to identical posts, by the way. And Nancy Pelosi, we've seen this clip 100 times. This person's posting this as if they just discovered it's breaking news. But yes, Alexandra Pelosi was on the phone admitting things we talked about many times. Pelosi very clearly, I mean, we've gone over this information 100 times over. All I'm pointing out is this stuff is public. You can read about it yourself. When nothing inevitably happens, here's one, January 6th, the false flag meant to blame Russia and you using Azov movement. The Patriot Front, January 6th, and the vanilla ISIS PSYOP, because it goes both ways, guys. Not just Antifa. It's all sorts of different groups. Whitney Webb interview, January 6th, the Azov Battalion and the war on domestic you. That's what's happening now. It was happening under Biden. Now it's happening under Trump. It's the same point. This is an interesting one to include. Ukraine and the new Al-Qaeda. Whitney wrote this for Last American Vagabond, March 2nd, 2022. It's just, this is Israel, a lot of different topics. This is an important shift to the new manipulation. And this includes everything we're talking about today as well. Now, Jason Bassett writes, MAGA used to scream tyranny at mask mandates. Now they're cool with curfews and federal troops. Bootlicking is the new patriotism. Strange times. He also says this, Trump gets in, the branding flips, and voila, just like that, the right's cheering for Agenda 2030. This is exactly what we've been saying from the very beginning. 2022, digital IDs, CBDCs, police state, pharma cartel, Department of Defense, mass surveillance, MAGA screaming angry. 2025, digital IDs, stablecoins, law and order, Pfizer cartel, Department of War, defending our borders. Happy. It's just a slight change. It's the same agenda. And the point we're getting at is all of this is a larger global Zionist technocratic agenda that I think is 100% being done to you with the involvement of Israel and a lot of other factors. But for the point of today, that's important not to miss. Jason Bassler says, starting today, the EU, their new entry-exit tracking system goes live. Anyone without a biometric passport, including Americans, now must provide fingerprints and a facial recognition scan to cross the border. Your body is now your passport. Welcome to the biometric age. I'm going to use this for a future show, but I'll just show you this image real quick because this is wild. This is real. I don't want to take time. I'll give the person a shout out when I show it on the next show. It was posted by somebody that we know. I can't remember who it was. I just pulled the image aside and I'm going to use it in a more of a focused technocratic show we have upcoming. But this was on the wall, HSBC, with a fingerprint with a QR code on it. It says your DNA will be your data. Wow. We've been telling you this was coming. Now, the point, though, is that this is very clearly a larger manipulation. Immigration being used in the EU and UK. I remember when I was traveling back when I was, 16? And after that, 17, 18, when I was backpacking through Europe, I didn't need a passport. You needed one to get in, and that was it. I was actually disappointed back then because I only got one stamp. You were allowed to freely travel amongst the countries in Europe. And today, they're using all these things that are largely manufactured to justify what you pretend is making you safer. In fact, it's making you far, far more at risk. But the point, obviously, this is the EU, right? Not the United States. Well, guess what? You already know this. This is a long since discussed conversation.
Great. We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. For years, Congress has required
You've heard it a million times. Biometric entry-exit tracking system. I'll play the end too.
In my administration, we will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
Oh, it looks like, I don't know if that's what you meant in the chat. It looks like it might be Spiro that was the one that posted that image. If that is, thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was him. But anyway, I'll get into it when I break that down in a future show. But this, I mean, it's just, maybe when this came out, right? And of course, I made a joke every time. Clinton couldn't get it done. And so all the MAGA go, oh, then it must be good because Clinton didn't do it. It's just such basic binary manipulation. The point is, it's exactly what we were hearing. Entry, exit, biometric tracking system. Now, what's crazy right now, have an experiment, guys. Go on and look at all these hardcore MAGA accounts. Look at exactly what they're saying about the EU exit, entry, exit tracking system. No, tyranny, World Economic Forum. Yeah, totally. And then cheering this because bad immigrants, even if that's exactly what's happening. It's just a narrative justifying the plan that was always there. They wanted this during COVID for different reasons. And I know honest people are seeing this and not being represented in the partisan game. As Whitney said on January 17th, hope Trump supporters will soon catch on to how the virtual border wall being built by companies like Peter Thiel, this is 2025, on Bilderberg Steering Committee, is meant to serve as a Trojan horse for digital ID by requiring not just foreigners entering the U.S., but any American traveling abroad to submit to a digital agenda. And the point is not just that with what they've discussed, with the lines they make about the immigration point. Now it's a whole different dynamic. And it's entry, exit, flying in. Like, it's clearly not what we were told or what people wanted it, believed it would be. Let's not forget, by the way, the obvious overlap here. Now, here is New York Post. Ellison of Oracle seeks U.S. ID cards. Now, Larry Ellison, who is massively in control of a large portion of U.S. media and obviously completely immersed with the AI agenda, Stargate, I mean, everything. He very clearly, let me see actually if I have this. If I don't, I'm not going to search for it. Yeah, look at that. And I mean, it's a long one. I think it's
your body cams will be transmitting that.
Yeah.
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior.
Right.
Because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
That was 2024, guys, in September. Donald Trump has immersed this guy in everything, it seems. So let's not forget how clear this is. And Larry Ellison is on record saying he is, more supports, he's an Israel supporter over everything else. And he says Trump partners in Stargate, Larry Ellison, wanted to introduce a digital ID off the back of 9/11 back in 2001. That's what this is about. That's 2001. Ellison of Oracle seeks U.S. ID cards and offered to give it to the Fed for free. Now Trump is paying him for it. This is the guy now in charge of the huge database structures backed by $500 billion in Donald Trump. And it's not just it's the AI-made injections. It's the Stargate surveillance, all of this. Palantir, we're watching the panopticon get built and being cheered on by the people pretending to fight it. Wild. Well, here's an advisor to Larry Ellison. We've shown you this guy before. Khalil Falud. Why don't we tattoo a Star of David on the forehead of every terrorist we have to release? Talking about the Palestinians held in prison without charge. My daughter said that, he writes. Proud father. This beast, she writes, serves as the advisor for Oracle, but also Microsoft, also a lot of different groups that are immersed in the U.S. government and also Israel. This guy is a Zionist and is screaming the quiet part out loud. I just want you to understand how alarming this is. One example to make the case of a ton we've shown you over the years. And it's not just Oracle. It's pretty much everyone you can look at right now. We need to be real about what we're staring at, as well as the understanding about what he's actually talking about right there. Tattoo a Star of David on the forehead of every terrorist. Think about saying that as somebody who's constantly pointing at the Holocaust and tattoos of Jews and pointing at the reality of what happened there and making the case of why we always have to be the victim and literally saying, do that to them. It's insane. The quiet part out loud. Now, on top of that, this is not new and it's very, very authoritative. I mean, this is why people can overlap with Zionism and point to Nazism. Okay. Look at low-key. Israeli tanks have seared a Star of David into what used to be Katiba Park for families in Gaza. Literally drove the Star of David, which is not the sign of Jewish people. It's a sign of the Israeli government. It is a Zionist symbol that has been used to hijack Judaism. The sign of Judaism is the menorah, I believe. Now, this also happened, and we talked about this. Israeli policemen beat up a Palestinian resident and literally branded his face with a Star of David. See? Not new. And in case you think quickly, oh, fake news, conspiracy, here's Haaretz. 7 Israeli cops expected to be tried for stamping Star of David on Palestinians' face. It's all blood libel until you can prove it. Of course, it always is anyway to people that want to lie about what they're doing. understand how important and clear that is. And the problem in this country right now, in the regard to the media side of it, is stuff just like this. And it's transparent and it's not even being hidden anymore. At least they tried before. Now they're just blatantly going, here's $7,000 to lie about Israel while the whole world sees what you're doing. This is a great article from Gen X Girl. Israel's coordinated campaign to propagandize conservatives in America. Which is a great job. Sourced out, very much breaking this down, and goes over all the stuff we've talked about, that she's been the head of this entire story for quite a long time. And we've seen all these guys. Literally, these clowns making videos of them going like, look at all the aid. Actually, I think I even have that right here. Basically pretending like the aid is being held back by Hamas. And the point is that you're standing there around the aid. So you're telling me that Hamas controls all this, but you're wandering through it and going, look at what Hamas won't let free. No, it's being held provably. That's everyone else in the conversation, from UN to human rights groups, will tell you that the food is being withheld by Israel. They have lists. They'll tell you those aren't allowed. And these clowns just go out there and lie. That's what they want from them. So this is the important part. Here's one of those clowns. And this is the point about, like, the morons, right? Using dumb people that don't even realize or are too shameless to care, like a loomer, I would argue, to push these lies for you. Max Blumenthal, the city of Hallandale Beach, Florida, has officially named September 29th Xavier Day in honor of Israeli-sponsored online influencer Xavier Durasu of PragerU. Sort of like Kash Patel's girlfriend. And it says the city commission draped an Israeli flag over the American flag during the ceremony. Guys, this symbolism is insane. You can't miss what this shows you. I mean, ask yourself how this makes sense. They're trying to, I'm not going to tell you what I think their intent is. My opinion would be that they're trying to send you a message, but you can decide. Your cover, why wouldn't you put it next to it, guys? That's not a joke. Look it up. They covered the American flag with the Israeli flag, when these are the people that are being paid to lie to you about the genocide. And your favorite guy says the same point. These are the people that are claiming Dearborn is a problem when it's literally them. Every accusation is a confession. Now, here's a point that I think is important, just to go over a couple of the things that are happening around this. Now, this will be touched on, I think, in either tomorrow or the next one when it comes to Antifa. Because the lies they're spinning around this, it's just outrageous. Not to say that there's not, obviously, like we said, with the Patriot Front element to this, but they're saying anyone with a black shirt and a mask, or one of those things, or protesting ICE, or Antifa, period. There's no deeper thought on this. And all those screaming right idiots out there are doing the same thing. Look at all the Antifa. How do you know that? Aren't they just people out there protesting? I'm not denying that there's an organized element to it. What's so funny, they point to all the politicians out there going, there's no such thing as Antifa, and then pretend that's what everybody else is saying. It's the mainstream alternative media, the mainstream media game. They do it every day. They've lost control, and they want you to believe, as they point to each other, that that's what everyone's doing. Guys, most people aren't stupid enough to argue because it's a provable point. There are obvious financial networks through Antifa, but then I'm also not stupid enough to say that literally everyone in a black shirt is part of that. It's lazy left-right paradigm stuff, and it happens every day. So we're going to get into that more. This is just an example of one of these overlaps about the way that they're dealing with these protests. Isn't it interesting how the stopping the crime in the country and immigration conversations just got mashed together, which is what, yes, one is a crime, but the point was it was supposed to be like the lawless cities, and it just seems ICE and FBI just rounding up people that are brown. And you may not think that if you're just blind to what's happening. It's objectively obvious. I have 1,000 examples I'll show you in the next show, and I've done it every time. But the point is that you got people protesting for Palestine, for example, just like in the beginning, and that just became the same conversation. Jihadist, Muslim, invaders, immigration, it's the same thing. They just mash all this together. Now, on top of it, we're going to get into the ceasefire point, which is the same idea, where they're out there going, we demand a state for Palestine, which has been the point the whole time. And so they go, look at them still protesting. What was it? They said, didn't you want a ceasefire? Why are you still protesting? Just so either just unaware of what they're really doing, or just so dishonestly trying to frame what their objective is. Excuse me. Samara Gill, I argued, as just one of these people that are on, it's kind of a mix of both. Probably not smart enough to understand why this is not what she thinks it is, but secondarily, probably just doesn't care anyway, because it's in the interest of the people that give them clicks and reach, or maybe funding. I don't know. And that's the game we talk about with like manufacturing consent. I think most of these people don't even realize that they're falling for this stuff or being a part of it. They benefit from it. They get shares. It's a building thing, just like with the corporate media, guys. Not every one of them is fully aware that they're deceiving you. She says, went to a pro-Palestine, in quotes, I guess. They're not, I guess. And it says, March today. Within 10 minutes, I was staring at an ISIS flag. Yeah, totally not, though. It's the Shahada flag. We've done this game, the tap dance, a million times. But you can decide, is she too dumb to know that's not what it is? Or is she just deceiving you for clear propaganda purposes? Oh, I don't think I did grab it, I thought. Hold on. Yeah, I think that's it, right?
Westminster. I mean, we've had a terrorist attack in the past.
So, just to cut to the chase, guys, that flag is not an ISIS flag. It's very easy to prove, and I'll show you next. It is called a Shahada flag. It overlaps with a few different things, but the main point, I believe, is it says there is no God but Allah, I think. It's no different than a Christian person saying there's no other God but Jesus and, Jesus Christ. It's the same kind of thing. So you can be angry about their different opinion, but it's insane to make it about terrorism when it's simply just a different, and it's not the ISIS flag, not even close. Now, have people used the American flag to carry out acts of terrorism? Yes. Have people used Christian symbols to carry out acts of terror? Yes. Does that make them terrorist items? No. See, that's called being objective. Could they be? Yes. Like anything could be. And just like this case, these people are trying to convince you that all Palestinian protesters are ISIS members because of one flag, which would be dumb even if it was an ISIS flag. Of course, you could also consider that people might just bring one, like the trucker convoy and the Nazi flag, and be like, we're all Nazi. It's very obvious how this game works. And both sides know it when they want to allow division, when they want to allow themselves to see it when they're looking at the other side. But on top of all of it, it's also just not an ISIS flag.
A flag for the Islamic State.
Right? It's also not that.
Right near Westminster. I mean,
which is the same point, but you could say it differently.
We've had a terrorist attack in the past few weeks, and now we have someone wielding an Islamic State flag.
And see, these people get a million views and shares and gets promoted and shared and pointed to by every politician, whether they know it's true or not. It's a cycle. It's a feel. And that's what we're all trying to highlight with the $7,000 funding. And that's just one view of a large apparatus. And it's not just Israel. Like every government tries to do it. Israel just has had, and still does to a large degree, but diminishing, an incredible effect to be able to propagandize Americans to a degree I've never seen anywhere else. But she's lying.
Modern Britain confirmed that that flag there is a flag for...
And look at how she's so confident, so sure of herself, such false certainty. That's what stupidity will give you.
...for jihad. So we're going to go have a look and ask them why they would fly that flag. I mean, there's the Palestinian flag and then there's the jihad flag. Two very different things.
Yeah, educate us.
It's a very interesting flag. What does it mean?
Declaration of faith.
See? He told her.
Basically, it means there's no God but Allah.
Hey,
his prophet is Muhammad.
Exactly.
It looks a lot like the jihad flag to me.
Nah. It's just a declaration of faith. That's it.
It's the Saudi. It's the...
See, I mean, so she just doesn't, they tell her, and either she's just like, I know, and they're wrong because they're dishonest Palestinians, and, lying, self-serving assumption, or she knows and doesn't care.
Saudi flag, but it's just black.
Why are you here today at the protest?
We're here to show the government they need to cut ties with Israel. We want no more.
Yeah, that's it. We don't want ties with Israel. Terrorist!
We want Palestine to be free.
Yep, Palestine to be free, right? That doesn't mean terror, despite your ridiculous, manipulative Zionist claims. That's like saying free anything means terrorism. It's just a dumb argument.
From what?
Free from Israel.
The troops have come out just a couple days ago.
Nope, you're an idiot. That's not true. Now, even if there was actually a ceasefire, that doesn't mean the end of the war, you child. The reality is they were still present, and the ceasefire didn't even happen, and they're still bombing, and they're still doing all sorts of things, including using ISIS gangs to hurt people in Palestine. But that doesn't matter to her.
So it is effectively free now, would you?
Yeah, it is, but obviously the original whole land, even where Israel is now, that was all Palestine's land anyways. So you want the land back.
Right, okay, so where are those Jews going to go?
Oh, the Jews. You mean only the Jews, though? You don't care about the rest of people that live in Israel? You realize there are other people than Jews that live in Israel, right? She doesn't care about them because she's totally not racist.
Where they came from.
Or I guess bigoted, because we're talking about religion.
They went to Palestine. There was somewhere else before.
Where
I'm not too educated on the history. I'm not too educated on the history. I'll be honest. But obviously, speak to someone older that knows the history. I'm not too educated on it. But all I know is Palestinians are getting killed right now. And yeah. So we're here to...
So you're happy for the Jews to be removed from Israel?
Very happy for that.
You see how childishly stupid? It's like, can you not hear? She's trying to manipulatively bend what he says into the view that she wants you to see. That's corporate media. That's mainstream alternative media. Those are manipulative, dumb people, or both.
That happen.
Okay, and how would you want that to happen?
God knows, innit? I don't really know.
Interesting flag. That's the jihad flag.
Right back to it. It's just so stupid. Now, somebody's saying, you give me all caps West Bank in the chat. Well, I have a point to make about the West Bank, but if you have something happening right now, put it in the chat. Let me see it, or well, whoever else. But I'm curious because there's lots going on. Some in the chat just all caps says West Bank, Ryan. I'm curious what that might mean. But, continuing. Wild. But so, this person goes, well, I did a Google search, and that's clearly not the ISIS flag. And she goes, jihad flag, commonly used by ISIS. Nope. Look, you could pretend that's a jihad flag. It's not. It's called the Shahada flag, and it literally is just a religious symbol. It's nothing. You could make it something if you want, but it's not. It's in most cases actually counterintuitive. It's not associated with it. The point is it's definitely not ISIS flag in any case. Not even remotely. That is the ISIS flag. So she just doubles down. Why? Because she looked it up on Wikipedia. Great job, journalist. You're doing a great job. Put that money, it's just pathetic. Oh, and you could ask Grok if you want. No, the Shahada flag refers to a flag featuring the Shahada. But as it says, there's no God but Muhammad is his messenger. It says, in contrast, the ISIS flag, called the jihadist flag, what she's claiming she's pointing to is not a specific variant of a black flag with the Shahada. So it has the symbol because ISIS it's like putting a cross on a KKK symbol, right? It's just amazing how people play on the ignorance of others every single day. And again, just, you can look it up for yourself. It's a very common symbol. It's not what they're claiming it is. But overall, this is a push from people like that to try to tell you that anybody on that side, and in a specific American view, that it's just the left terrorist group. Because it's not inciting, apparently, to say every one of them are terrorists and should be arrested or killed, which is what most of them are doing. Which, again, I'm not arguing in reverse that they're somehow responsible for other people's actions. I'm not a child. But the point is that they point to people calling me a fascist. They're trying to get us killed. That's incitement. Loomer saying, arrest them all. It's incitement. And then acting shocked when people, act like you're doing something. It's wild. But in a larger sense, it's just about anybody saying Palestine, therefore, is a terrorist. It's happening in the UK, Australia. It's over the top. And David Icke, first Bennett Johnson goes on Fox News and says, I'm tired of watching the president get shot in the head. You mean the claim that thing nicked his ear, even though all the evidence pretty much proves that's not possible with what happened? You can decide. But it says, I'm tired of watching Christian children get killed at a church. Oh, you mean that Mormon church where that, by all accounts, that MAGA appearing guy drove that in? Like, he's just the guy. He's got a list of what he's supposed to say. Or Tyler Robinson shooting. Nobody's proven he's even necessarily responsible, let alone being a left or right. Yes, there's data points. These people will lie to you about anything. And that's why they benefit. They're, again, the dumbest people in the room are getting the loudest voice, or rather the most willing to manipulate, profiteer, because they don't want you to hear the objective, nonpartisan conversation. But I'm tired of federal law enforcement getting attacked. It's the narrative. David Icke says, I'm tired of Trump sycophants justifying fascism by reading his script to demonize all opposition on the road to the Civil War. Yeah, exactly. Here's an example. Now, I'll go over these in the next show in general. You can watch. I'll play the clip in the next one we talk about. But this is a guy, Real Robert, simply saying, the anti-sheep, even as he demonstrates that he's very much a partisan sheep. He says, here it is, 1 minute and 50 seconds of seditious conspiracy caught on videotape. Okay, so showing people in black with masks doing things. Can you prove? So this claim you keep spitting everyone on that side of the conversation is an organized network of terrorism, which I argue there is elements of that in this conversation. But so now you're claiming that's the thing, right? You're making the case that it's a network of organized, RICO, all of it. And then broadly pointing at anybody with a black shirt and a mask going, Antifa! You're literally proving that you guys are ridiculous. Like, if you're going to make a claim about networked, organized anything, shouldn't be the next point that you prove that network, as opposed to just assuming because you yelled it out loud that means it's real. Therefore, anybody that says anti-fascist is therefore. Again, this is why most people are not ridiculous. And they can see through this like a piece of, like, I don't know, glass. Make a more intelligent analogy. The point here is that clearly they're just making the case about, look at them, that's all Antifa, all terrorists, we know it. Okay, could they not be other Republicans dressed like that, like the two that got caught doing it the other day? I'm not saying that's what it all is. Could it be? Yes, like we just saw. Could it be the feds doing it? Yes, it could, like you'd say in every other circumstance, including January 6th, but pretend it's not happening now. You see how this goes? And this was the point I'm even showing you this for. Dark Mode says, just wait until we designate MAGA a terrorist organization. You see, not the adults in the room can very clearly step back and go, yes, that's the obvious next step, which then what happens, guys? Then you've got the left and the right under terrorist groups, so it's a domestic terrorism issue, and your government can use it against every single person. They can do that now. But this is about the growing agenda and how much you want to bet that ends up being the circumstance that swings back around. The next time they go after MAGA, and then it's the same thing. And all you're doing is building this teeter-totter where the next side jumps up and goes, we can't allow them to keep being in power. And they go the other way. And 4 years go by and they go, well, we can't allow them to be in power. And it goes back the other way. And what happens? The government keeps doing what's doing. Well, everyone's screaming about the other side. I know we can see that. And all of it's based on superficial things that are shockingly unconstitutional, by the way. Well, here's an interesting overlap. Glenn Beck, and this is important to understand, as we get into the conversation of overlapping this, especially with the ceasefire from Turning Point USA, from American conservatives and Charlie Kirk, and the very obvious reason that I think he was taken out. The shifting of awareness, and this video makes this crystal clear. As Candace Owens says, proud of you students, talking about people from Turning Point USA events. Recent ones where Glenn Beck is up there with his shirt, freedom, supporting Charlie Kirk, when all of them are actively doing things that undermine what he claimed he wanted. She says, every last one of you, proud of them. She says, this is way forward, not the turning point they wanted, but the turning point they deserve. USS Liberty, Foreign Agent Registration Act. Sharpen your debate skills like Charlie would have. Know these points inside and out. Now, maybe he would have if he continued evolving around Israel. You could decide about that. His entire career before that was pandering for Israel. But I agree, he was changing his opinion. I think it was when he realized that Zionism was a different thing than Israel. Zionism was a different thing from Judaism, and realizing that Zionism was what was destroying this country and that he could still support the state of Israel and not support Zionism. That's what I believe the shift was. But here's what happened recently, and I think it shows you what's really happening and why they're so desperate to stop this in every way possible.
Has an overwhelming lobby over the United States government, and
I'm sorry, let me read this real quick. Just while you're there, I'll read it. So it basically just says, Glenn Beck visibly panicked, stumbled, and began sweating when a young student asked him about the Israeli control over the government. He struggled to respond to questions about fighting wars for Israel, the USS Liberty incident, and could not clearly state whether he supports America over Israel.
Overwhelming lobby over the United States government, and we have unconditionally supported them. We have fought their wars in the Middle East. Bibi Netanyahu came to our Congress in the 90s, told us a list of countries that we need to take out. Some were Syria, Iraq, Iran, Libya, etc. Through those wars, we have lost trillions of dollars. We have lost American servicemen.
We're lobbying everybody else, and they will.
Don't you love that? It's happening to all of them right now. Are you Israel or America first? Guys, I'm telling you, these people might as well be watching my show. And it could be any number of other shows that are even people on the right at this moment. Because they're getting the similar message from people who are in any way honest about this.
Wars, we have lost trillions of dollars. We have lost American servicemen.
We're lobbying everybody else, and they will.
Charlie was starting to notice about the Israel lobby.
Could I answer my question? Could I answer the question, please?
You're talking about one thing.
You know, how frustrated he's getting with supposedly his support base. Think about that.
They don't teach in school. They don't teach about the USS Liberty, where Israel literally came, blew up an American ship because they want us to get in their war with Egypt, and they don't teach that in school. I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, great answer. Guys, things are changing. If you're honest with yourself, it's undeniable.
I have a question. Why is there this societal taboo around criticisms of Israel? For example, AIPAC doesn't have to register as a foreign lobby, but like the Australia lobby does. And it just
that should be changed. That should be corrected. Look, I am not going to say Israel should have any special privileges. None.
Except you go on to say that quite frequently on your show. But, you know, I'll yell differently in front of you as you pressure me to say something else. These people are getting owned, guys. It's very clear. They are not in control of the narrative, and that's alarming for people who have historically controlled the narrative. I'll shout out some other work that the Gen X girl did a great article for the Last American Vagabond. The link's on her thread there. I'll include it here as well. In regard to the zombie economy of Israel. It's entitled How America Tax Dollars Prop Up Israel's Zombie Economy. And it's really important to understand two main things. That one, your governments, your state governments are being coerced into buying or getting donated things they can't refuse that force them to basically subsidize the Israeli government. And then they pass laws that make it where you're not allowed to divest from them. It's manipulative. And on top of that, your pension funds are losing millions of dollars because you're being forced to invest in them. Think about the fiduciary. It's fiduciary, right? Fiduciary. Let me look it up. Is it an I? Misspelled it. Yeah, fiduciary. In regard to just the point was your obligation to make money for your clients. I just feel the word's clear, but I feel like I was mispronouncing it for some reason. Yeah, that's right. In any case, the point is that they have an obligation to make money for their clients. And yet they're forcing you to be invested in something that ultimately does not make them money. I mean, there's just no way around that. This is Israel in every which way you look, forcing this country, businesses, to manipulate their own people. So she put this out on August 26th. My work on Israel bonds was featured on Jimmy Dore. Also nice to see TLAV on the take. Now, this is when I was on Jimmy Dore recently. And so he and I are talking about this back and forth, and her work was referenced. And her and I got to get connected after that, and that's why she wrote the article. And we also mentioned it on Catherine Austin Fitt's interview recently. But I'll include both of those, as well as her thread right here, talking about when I covered this on the show and the interview we did. A lot of great source material. The point is that we're being forced to support an empire that's struggling for obvious reasons. It's not in America first. That's Israel first. Now, AIPAC, in the midst of all this, is desperate. Now, we've played this for you many times. It's a 5-6 minute clip of MSNBC, of all places, breaking down for you why AIPAC is unprecedented in every possible way and alarming ways that show you that they're basically paying to influence your government's actions in real time. Not even basically. That's what's happening. And overall, that they're influencing policy to a degree that is unprecedented. It's obvious. It is illegal. And so AIPAC recently put out an advertisement going, we're American, we're American, we're American. And no one's buying it. But it shows you the diminishing influence that they have in general.
Is trying to rebrand now as an America First organization.
You may have heard our name, but how much do you really know about AIPAC? AIPAC is an American organization that works to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Don't forget, by the way, that it's not. And you could prove this. Look it up on Wikipedia. It was literally an agency or a group created by Israel, in Israel, and conducted in the United States. And as we'll show you in a second, JFK, before he was killed, was demanding that they register as a foreign agent. Now, I forget the name off the top of my head. It was a different acronym, a different name, and they ultimately changed AIPAC to hide that transition, and it's all very public. And my point is that anybody with any authority knows that. It's easy to look up, other than ones that are, the current junior team kind of people that are falling into politics because they're too dumb to know that they're being played. But historically, people in power know it, and they've hidden it from you because they're being manipulated. It's very, very obvious to see. But it was a group that was literally an agent of the foreign government, and he demanded that, and then he died. You could argue that's why. I think it was a reason. Say also the Dimona nuclear plant and plenty of other points. But overall, it's not debatable that this is a group that's actively, one, working for interest of the foreign government, but two, is quite literally created by it.
New X banner says, funded by Americans, directed by Americans, strengthening alliance that benefits America. The reason AIPAC is pushing this is because they don't want to register as a foreign agent. Something one president, John F. Kennedy, fought very, very hard to make happen, but lucky for AIPAC, he was assassinated and that pressure was lifted. Keep in mind that AIPAC has an office in Jerusalem to have direct contact with Israeli officials. They really want to push the laughable argument that they don't need to register because they're funded by American citizens. Then let's go ahead and have some Chinese with American citizenship fund a lobbying group that benefits China, create an office in Shanghai so they have direct contact with Chinese officials. Let me know how long that will last before having to register with FARA. The ridiculous argument only flies because no president after John F. Kennedy tried to stop it.
It's not hard to see, guys. So here is the actual document, by the way, and I've shown you this before. Wally Rashid, fact, the only reason AIPAC is not registered under FARA is because JFK was assassinated. Now, that's not to say the same as that it was, that's why. I do very much think that's an obvious, most likely situation. You could look at the evidence. I'll include my interview with Corey Hughes. And on that note, by the way, it's important to check out the independent media, independent media token that he's working on and that I'm a board member part of. And I think the important thing is that that's something that will be used to fund independent media with grants, free money for independent media. It's a fantastic idea. The point, though, on this topic is the interview we had about JFK. Was Israel behind the assassination of JFK? His answer is yes. The evidence is pretty damn clear. But the point today is that he was. Or rather, the only reason that it wasn't was because he was killed. You see the difference? The point is, that's a fact. Whether you think it's because of that is different, but the moment he got killed, that just went off the table. AIPAC's predecessor organization, that's what it was, the American Zionist Council, was concerned registering under FARA would, quote, destroy the Zionist movement in America. Guys, this is how easy this is to prove. Here's the document. It says, Judge Rifkind then made a plea for no registration, stating it was the opinion of most of the persons affiliated with the council, the American Zionist Council, that such registrations would be so publicized by the American Council on Judaism that it would eventually destroy the Zionist movement. And then JFK got killed and it all went away. So, the influence on media, especially the conservative media right now, but in general, is undeniable, guys, and it goes back a really long way. AIPAC is just one element of the fight of the political overlap. And we have the Epstein overlap and the coercive elements. It's a lot of this stuff. So getting into the ceasefire overlap, here's the rapid response account from White House. This is what they were saying. This is on the 11th. No, it's one brief step at the 11th. We're going to go back to the 10th right here to get into some of the stuff before that I wanted to set the table with before we finish with that ceasefire conversation. But on the 11th, it says, endless applause for President Trump. Quote, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in the crowd at the Hostage Square. At the Hostage Square. People are so ridiculous. The President of Peace. Okay, so the White House shares that. Sharing a clip of CNN is 13 seconds long. And think about what they're pointing to. So you have Israelis supporting Israel wearing Make America Great Again hats because they're trying to make America great again. None of them are saying that. How do you miss what that shows you? They believe that movement is making Israel great. They believe that, or rather to make it very specific, they believe that Trump's administration is fighting for Israel over anybody else. Why? Because that's what Netanyahu is telling them. Why? Because it's what's happening. So I just think it's wild to me because, I mean, maybe that's even why CNN's pointing it out. I don't know. Frankly, most cases I see today show me that CNN is pulling punches for what's going on. Like criticizing Trump, or rather Obama, for not praising his ceasefire deal. Again, it's one government, guys, which can influence everything when they want to. But the point is that this is about them trying to make it, look, everybody's supporting Trump. We're winning. We made the deal. Ceasefire, Nobel Peace Prize. I don't think anybody believes this other than blind supporters of Trump and his team and Zionists that are backing it all. Especially the Democrats don't. They won't anyway because Trump bad, orange man, whatever. But, in the team sports side. But generally speaking, I think most people can recognize, look, you can see them still bombing. What are we talking about? So this is what it was. Here's the clip.
Of course, endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause for President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in that crowd over at Hostage Square.
Right, that's it. That's the clip that was shared. And everyone's sharing it and making a point here. So they clearly were talking pretty steadily. There was no pause. There was no stunned silence. And what they were simply saying is, everyone's cheering for him. Everyone in Israel is cheering for Donald Trump. Everyone in Israel, at least in that square, the point, they're all wearing Make America Great Again hats. Well, I don't see how you think that's a positive thing from the Republican MAGA side to be like, look, we're winning. To me, it shows the exact opposite. But here's what I find first important on this. White House shared that, right? 2:51, October 11th. Well, 3:07, October 11th, Luca Tanner takes it a little bit further and says, breaking, same 13-second clip, CNN is stunned, all capitals, upon seeing people wearing MAGA hats and holding Trump signs in Tel Aviv. The war is over. Right. Okay. So Israelis are screaming that narrative because they want to benefit from this. The war's not over. It didn't even slow down. I mean, I'll make this clear in a second. But just stunned. Okay. Hear it again.
Of course, endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause.
Okay. It sounds pretty milquetoast. Yeah. And his applause. Stunned.
For President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in that crowd over.
Man, they seem stunned. They seem absolutely floored, don't they? I'm just making fun of them because this is what partisan media does on all sides. But here, it's better. So he shared 307, Luca Tanner, with 8,000 followers. Okay. And then here is Eric Dougherty, except he edited it once already. Now I'm going to make a point about that. But this is 3 o'clock. He says, breaking. CNN is stunned. They just parrot each other. I don't even think they've watched the clip. And it says, upon seeing people wearing MAGA hats, endless applause for Trump. I even saw one wearing war is over. They're just like repackaging the same point, guys. This is what they do. It's not just unique to the right. It's what the partisan team sport politics does. Half of them are probably bots half the time. We can't tell. But one thing I note, by the way, if you look at the edit, it's identical. It's the exact same post. So I think what some of them are doing is sort of gaming the edit to like punch it back up to the front of the algorithm. I think that's what they're doing. But then Benny Johnson comes along an hour later and says, CNN was visibly stunned. He takes it a little further. Were they? Same 13-second clip. They seem pretty calm to me. They were stunned. They reported crowds, MAGA hats, endless applause. It's just the same thing. It's just hilarious to me. This is what Benny Johnson and the rest do. It's one small example of their entire day of BS. And then Jack comes along 10 minutes later and takes it even further. Ever seen CNN at a loss for words? Watch their reaction to seeing people with MAGA hats. They're stunned. It's just, you want to see it again? It's just for prosperity.
Endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause for President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats.
Wow, did you see that stunned silence? They're just stunned, silent. They can't even make sense of the same two sentences they say. I'm just making fun of it. It's just hilarious to me. But I could have done this for an hour. Look at the words. You can find 100,000 posts of people with a lot of influence. I think this is one of them. Yeah, 151,000 followers just sharing the same false thing. But he's decided to make it a little further. He didn't even watch it, or he's lying on purpose on top of it. A loss for words. It's hilarious to me. Now, again, the point was really MAGA's hats and supporting. No, that's a Make America Great Again. Not the movement, what people want, but what Trump's thing, it's make Israel great. That can't be missed at this point. Now, the real movement is not MAGA's that. MAGA is Make America Great Again. The people who are honest about that, like the woman was saying to Cat Turd, is that it's about that. If Trump lies about it, then we call Trump out. And I think some of them still don't want to do that, but that's the honest part of it. Now, here's what's funny. Hillary Clinton is praising Donald Trump on CBS for his peace plan, calling it a significant first step. She says the hard work of rebuilding Gaza will now be the main focus. Oh, okay, so they're exactly on the same side. Winning. And Janice Girl says, the poor Palestinians are screwed when the Queen of War praises Trump. Yeah. So Clinton and Condoleezza Rice, they're all going, yeah, good, Trump. How does that make sense? If we're told they're the deep state pedophiles who are going to go after no matter what, then wouldn't they just take every possible opportunity to derail? And yeah, they probably would. This shows you that this is what they all would have done. Kamala, anybody else, because it's all one thing. And on a quick side note, which is just enjoyable to point out, Barry Weiss's first pitch at CBS, because that's what this was, a roundtable with Anthony Blinken, Mike Pompeo, Hillary Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, at this point, and it was already out for like a day plus, had 150 views. Added with this 24/7 CBS stream, it's over 1,200. Yeah, the point is, guys, mainstream alternative media is the new part of it, but these things are propped up. This is just simply showing you that they're, Larry Ellison, I guarantee they're not going to stop. It's subsidized. Larry Ellison will dump in $1 billion and force this into every advertising and every point, make it play on airport station. They'll make sure that this gets seen as something that's influential, even if it's not. Same things being done with mainstream alternative media. Now, last, same kind of point is the same CNN over here, literally calling out Obama. CNN called out Barack Obama for, quote, writing a whole post about a peace deal, but failing to acknowledge Donald Trump did it at a time when they were still bombing them. And I just said, CNN's on our side now. Hashtag winning. I mean, at some point, you just got to pile up the absurdity and acknowledge it. I mean, it's just wild. Now, last point on this is, as most of the Republican, conservative, whatever, going, peace deal, Trump did it, we're winning, it's all over. Weirdly enough, you got Alex Jones jumping out in the sun and going, World War IV has begun. That's what he wrote. World War IV? You've been saying World War III is almost here for, what, a decade? And then you just, World War IV. It's just, I have to play this. I mean, come on. It's wild to me that people like this continue to, I mean, again, I'm very certain these things are propped up. They're not really what they look like. For how often you can see them wrong, or alternatively, whether it's TLAV or plenty of others, Unlimited Hangout, Conscious Resistance, the IMA in general, everybody on the consistency of being correct. Now, not just that we're always somehow inside, that, you know, we wait and we report. And I mean, look at our track record, guys. I'm patting myself on the back, but you can look. My public track record goes back well before COVID-19. You show me where the vast majority of the time what we're discussing turns out to be the case, because we're measured, we research, we're objective and nonpartisan. I've been wrong plenty of times, but in the consistency of the long record, our track record speaks for itself, and it is a light year ahead of what we're seeing on this platform or any of the mainstream alternative media manipulators out there who are constantly being shown to be wrong, but somehow claim they're always right. But let's play this clip, because what's interesting to me is the deviation from the general. I think he's just desperate to regain some kind of clout with most of his audience that's starting to go, what happened to you? How are you not calling this out? I think that's why. But it's interesting. You see where this goes.
The Ukraine-Russia war, the NATO-U.S. proxy war with Russia, has come to its most dangerous point at this time.
Okay.
Russia has succeeded in its special military operation.
Got it. So here's where we're going to start. Not U.S., even though everyone with a brain in the world knows that this is U.S. more than anybody in regard to what's happening in Ukraine and Israel, by the way, and other countries. But to call it a NATO war and constantly frame it like somehow Trump is just standing by the side going, I'm just trying to help everybody. I'm just over here trying to give you advice. It's a U.S. war. It's not Biden alone. It goes back before Biden to Trump. Even though it didn't start publicly, it was ongoing back for decades before that. We've talked about Operation Aerodynamic and the reality of the CIA funding of the fascist movement, which went right up until this started. It's not hard to see that they've been cultivating this. So to aim it as just the NATO thing is just an effort to try to like his claim was Trump would end at day one, right? Didn't happen. So to just kind of make it like the argument is that Trump would have, but they wouldn't let him. How often do I make that point? He'd save the world, but the Democrats wouldn't let him do it. And NATO wouldn't let. Okay, maybe. But in a material sense, what's the difference if our point is that it wasn't going to happen? But I don't even think that's what's going on. I think it's obvious that they have an interest in maintaining this. Now, the next point.
Russia has succeeded in its special military operation securing the east. The NATO-U.S. proxy war with Russia has come to its most dangerous point at this time.
Is it? I mean, again, in a very real objective, is looking at the information. What right this moment is more of a threat than what it's been the entire time? Now, you may hear more things, and objectively, maybe you think it is more dangerous. Certainly could be. I think what we're watching is the focus on it. I mean, look, guys, as I've said every single time, do you think Putin's not aware that Donald Trump or Biden or the U.S. government in general are involved with? He says this. You can listen to him say it. So he's known from the very beginning. He said it before it really even kicked off, that he knows this is the U.S. government. He knows they're involved. He knows what they're doing in the areas of Crimea. He knows what they've been doing in Donbass. He knows what's involved. So to argue that it's suddenly now that he sees the U.S. Army in them, that now he's going to... It's been the same thing the entire time. And again, if you listen, which I guarantee you, Alex knows this, Putin has been clear about that. It's very aware who's involved. So if the argument is now that they're arming to a new degree, which is what he's going to say, that now Putin's going, I'm going to hit back. What would be different now than the other 75,000 times they've been arming them from the moment this started? Or that they've proven, the Times in the UK reported, that Israel, or rather the US, was literally conducting armed operations with the U.S. military taking the Azov movement inside of Russia. Or we have the example of them allowing them to conduct things with inside of or the recent attack in Moscow. The guys, every one of these, I'm in no way claiming this is a small thing. These are nuclear powers playing around with all this. But what has Russia done every single time? And this is not to say good guy. I argue all the time, it could just be that they see what's happening in the world and are smart enough to recognize playing the good guy, playing the less belligerent one, at the very least, is good for their image. But to me, it's just objective outcome. Okay. The point is, what have they done every time? As Jones has done 75 times. Russia threatened nuclear war if so-and-so. No, that's not what they did. As every time Putin says, well, if you take this action, we reserve the right to take whatever action we deem necessary. And they go, nuclear war. And what do they do when that happens? Oh, they go to the UN. They make statements. They make it clear. They've never, and I'm not saying it couldn't happen tomorrow. I'm not diminishing the reality of what it is. What I'm trying to point out is people like this, and I think obviously right now taking the opportunity to lurch into this as opposed to what's going on with Gaza because he wants you to focus there and make it look like he's the one seeing it. It's not new. It's just not. Now let me play a little bit more of it. And I want to make the larger case that look at what he's leaving out. You're going to talk about the world war between Ukraine and Russia and the other people involved, which certainly could, especially since we realize that the world war dynamic in any sense compared to like a World War II situation has been ongoing since before Syria. So objectively, and that's my point is they just don't want to call it that. So I'm not even claiming there's not that dynamic. It's the abuse of the way they cover this. My point on top of that is you're going to talk about Ukraine and Russia and ignore Israel fighting a 5-nation front war with the US and the UK and everybody else involved, and and the UK and Russia, that's the world war. It's he's deliberately ignoring the elephant in the room. And I think you know why.
The Ukraine-Russia war, the NATO-US proxy war with Russia, has come to its most dangerous point at this time. Russia has succeeded in its special military operation, securing the east of Ukraine and Crimea. And now because Ukraine is not having elections and now not suing for peace, and NATO has decided to continue on, Russia...
And Trump. Right? That means Trump. That means Donald Trump. That means the UK. They're involved and they're a part of this because Trump is funding them. So this weird separation where he's not the one, it's NATO. That's the United States government, guys. Now, in part, yes, I know there's more moving parts, but we know the U.S. has largely been the one manipulating that. That's a historic reality. So when he keeps saying NATO, you can't decouple that from Donald Trump and the U.S. administration, even though he tries to play it that way.
It is expanding and taking even more cities and more towns and talking about encircling Kharkiv and Kiev and then forcing everybody to evacuate and then leveling the place.
Russia leveling the place. I highly doubt that based on everything I've ever seen from this government, but certainly possible. He's talking about them taking more territory. Now, if you remember the way this started, and remember the reality that Russia made it very clear, they're not looking to take over Ukraine. And we saw the lies in day one about how they circled Kiev. That didn't happen. The narrative was they expected Russia to rush in and take everything because that's how they viewed it. They didn't do that. The reality is Russia made it clear this is about the special operation. It's about the Nazi element that they've clearly, verifiably built there. And that's all they were trying to stop. Largely Crimea, Donbass, the largely Russian-speaking areas that they were ethnically cleansing. Look to Eva Bartlett, Vanessa Beeley. It's provable. And the only reason at this point, that seems to me anyway, that they're rationalizing just completely taking it is because this never stopped. Had the U.S. stopped making this a problem and allowed Russia to to bring an end to it, at least as they framed, right, which was ultimately being securing those areas and making sure that there was no issue with the Azov movement, they argued, at least they claimed, I can't know for sure, that they weren't going to just take over all of Kiev. Now, had we let it play out and actually allowed some kind of peace, which is what Zelensky actually tried to want to do very early, and the U.S. stopped it, easy to look up, then that probably would have ended with a demarcation line. They would have kept Donbass and Crimea, and that would have been seen as a loss for the U.S. and Ukraine, but it would have very clearly ended. No, they didn't want that, though. They wanted to keep pushing. They wanted to keep their proxy war, Lindsey Graham and the rest, to the last man, right? And now Russia's being forced to take action, if that's the way you want to look at it. It seems to make the most sense to me. You can frame that as good guy, that's not how I see it. The truth is, it's pretty obvious that what the U.S. government has driven into reality is causing reaction by the Russian government, and now they're going to point to it as, look at what Russia's doing, which is essentially what he's doing here.
So that's what happens in these wars, and these escalations continue. And NATO has not come to the table with any of the deals that Putin had basically agreed with Trump.
So you're to believe that NATO has the deciding factor. So you're talking about a clear dynamic between Ukraine and Russia that the U.S. is largely controlling, and that you're saying, oh, NATO didn't agree. What the hell does that matter? I mean, look, there's an overlapping point. All I'm saying, just like with Israel, that if the U.S. wanted this, it would have happened. So you can't blame, he's just trying to kind of dance around the reality that Trump, or just the U.S. government, it would have been Biden the same, are the ones making this continue.
So now Trump says that he is going to give them Tomahawk cruise missiles in the next few weeks, he thinks.
Yeah, man. So what do you think that means? That he's ending it on day one, or he's doing the same thing like Biden did and you're just kind of slanting in a new way? Look, if you stand back and remove the narrative, what's the same? The U.S. government funding the Azov movement that's continuing to go against Russia. That's what we're talking about. And you can go back to the foreign policy article that Whitney and I discussed right when it started that proved to you that they were planning this, as we've talked about for years, building this, expecting this to happen because they were trying to create the same situation. It kind of blew up in their face, but I think Syria was a positive outcome for them because of all of it. It's just painful to watch this effort to try not to make it about the people who are involved.
Russia came out today and said that is absolute war. That is direct war. You do that, we're going to start targeting NATO targets.
This is what he does every single time. Look for yourself and recognize what they're saying is the same point. We know you're involved. We've known from the beginning. And if you do that, which, by the way, he's done many times, so why would today be different than every other time before it? The claim is that Russia says, well, we have the right to respond. And if you act from certain NATO countries, the argument is that makes you a valid target. That's what they've said. And then many times later, haven't done that. They're simply pointing out, look, if we wanted to take this all the way, you are a co-belligerent. We know that. And then they don't. Over and over and over. Yeah, it could happen now. And if it did, it would be the U.S. government and everyone else involved who are allowing this to continue. It'd be their responsibility. But overall, I doubt it will. Watch as yet again, this becomes bluster from World War III to World War IV. And it's the same thing.
This is why there was a threat escalation ladder the RAND Corporation developed in the 50s that has been adopted worldwide. Every government uses it, okay? That's why, remember, Biden said we can't give them F-16s and Abrams tanks. That leads to World War III.
Oh, isn't that interesting? He's trying to point out the escalation. All he really means is there's a dynamic of, well, if we do, then they'll do more. They don't need some RAND document to rationalize tit for tat. It's a very simple concept. He just will sound very intelligent. The point is that you just made clear that Biden was unwilling to give them weapons, at least on the narrative, because that was World War III. And then Trump's like, give you missiles, go. So you just kind of made it clear that Trump is the one more likely to cause World War III. But I don't think it's different. I think Biden and Trump are the same thing when it comes to the outcome. I just think it's funny the way he just kind of trying to make a different point kind of made the point he wasn't trying to.
That's what, because on the escalation ladder, there's the next escalation, the next escalation, and we're following the exact escalation.
Yeah, tit for tat, man. It's very simple.
Up into limited nuclear war, total nuclear war, that basically just happens in a few hours once you go in the last few steps of this. So
yeah, and you know who's championed that? Donald Trump. Look it up. He's been the one who's been pushing the tactical nukes and the use of them since his first administration. Remember what Putin said? This will create a situation where we will be forced to take. His point was, if you fire a tactical nuke, we from our side do not know the difference between that and a regular nuke. So we will be forced to respond as if you fired nukes. So it essentially removes the reality of being able to use tactical nukes. Doesn't matter. Donald Trump's been championing that from the day he was in power. But who cares about that, right? Though it's always somebody else's fault.
We have such a normalcy bias, though, that everybody just seems like, oh, that's a million miles away. Ukraine might as well be Mars. It's not. China just cut off all rare earth mineral exports to anybody that works for the U.S.
That's not really what happened, by the way, but we'll go into that in a different show. There's more of a it's like we pointed out in regard to the barrier they're putting there. And on top of that, be clear, there's 100,000 ways in which the U.S. government can circumvent that through other countries. But it's still important, though. And I argue that's a large reason why we're seeing other actions. But as usual, the way that things are framed matters.
They control 95% of it, okay? The globalists allow them to be at,
I think it's 98, but either way.
Positions like that. And now China's double-crossed them. This is absolutely out of control. So we're in the new world war. And that's what all the big think tanks have been saying for a couple of years. But now it's official, okay?
All the big think tanks,
plus.
Typically, all the mainstream experts are always right. All the think tanks like Atlantic Council and Council of Foreign Relations. Yeah, they're the good guys, right? They're usually the ones giving you the skinny, right? I mean, really? These are the people that have lied to you your entire life that he used to call out. And now they have all the big think tanks. They know that World War IV. Well, don't they also have an interest in hyping the word? Yes, exactly so. I just think this is painful to watch.
So we're in the new world war. And that's what all the big think tanks have been saying for a couple.
Now, I want to point out the World War point is valid to make that in a general sense that we've been in a multi-nation kind of conflict dynamic for quite a long time. So don't take this as not as the, ignoring that there is conflict. By every metric they use for World War II, we've been in that situation for a long time. It's the use of he's not saying it's about to happen or it's now and it's going forward. He's trying to make the claim that it's there to use it for another agenda. And guess what? Ignoring the most obvious genocide and warfare in the world right now that anybody can see. Think about that.
Here, but now it's official, okay? You got 100,000 plus North Korean troops in Ukraine, more coming.
He's official that World War III or IV, is happening in Ukraine.
You've got all these different proxy wars going on. This is the new World War. Now, the CIA called the Cold War World War III. I agree with that term. This is really World War IV, and it's getting kinetic. It's economic, it's cultural, and it's incredibly dangerous. And
by the definition, it just becomes everything all the time. Which, to a degree, you can talk about fifth generation warfare. It's not a joke. But you get the point of constantly using that. Like, if you're going to declare it, then watch us tomorrow, the next week, a month from now, he does it again. So if we're already there, or he said that in the past, World War III is here, and then next week we're almost to World War III. It's like, well, hold on, didn't you just say we were there? It's just a hype toy, guys. That's all it really comes down to.
NATO did start this. Doesn't mean Russia's perfect. But NATO and the EU are the bad guys. They encircled Russia. They started it. In the case of China, they're the bad guys.
That's Donald Trump. That's the U.S. government. That's Biden. You can't keep pretending like that's not obvious.
Guys, they're going into Vietnam, grabbing islands and drilling rigs. They're going into
China,
islands around Japan. They're going into the Philippines and stealing islands and ramming.
Right. China. Right. I mean, I actually don't think that's entirely what's happening, but overall, are we really pretending like you don't have, if you're looking at the world right now and you can't see that Israel is forcibly occupying multiple countries, that the U.S. government has been for decades, for a century, dancing around and just taking what they want and occupying countries and regime changing and stealing what they can. And you're making it out to be, look, call out whatever government is doing that. If they're illegally seizing territory, that's a problem. Sort of like when they manipulated the reality of Honduras to seize the land for Prospera. But you see, none of these things are going to get called out when it's in the sphere of what they claim is make America great, whatever. It's the same government that he claims he's always fighting, and he's now supporting their enemies being called out for whatever they're doing. He is creating the narrative right now that this is the good guy side, that's the bad guy side. It's binary. It's always been like that.
People's boats and everything. They are out of control. They're building huge ports in the Caribbean.
Did he just really argue that China is taking boats? Let me make sure.
In the case of China, they're the bad guys. They're going into Vietnam, grabbing islands and drilling rigs. They're going into islands around Japan. They're going into the Philippines and stealing islands and ramming people's boats and everything. They are out.
Right. As the U.S. government is literally assassinating boats full of innocent people every day. That's not, guys, this is something that they have yet to, let's just put it as objectively as possible, not a single piece of evidence yet. And the first one was even turning around.
Out of control. They're building huge ports in the Caribbean. They're just taking over. Trying to push us.
Yeah, China's taking over. As evidenced by how many countries China's occupying, right? As evidenced by all the wars that China's currently involved with for territory, right?
Out of the Panama Canal. So that's the big issue. That's what we should be dealing with, not in this damn thing with Russia. But the EU and the globalists have just absolutely positioned the U.S. for collapse at the end of the dollar. And they're actually...
The globalists. Right. And who are they exactly? The ones that are not actively encroaching on everyone else's territory? The ones that are not actively pushing... Well, I take that back in regard to, I think all of them in their own way are pushing the globalist sort of World Economic Forum, one government kind of idea. But the point is that if you're trying to make them alone the globalists, it's just an embarrassing claim to make. There are more objectively obvious globalist technocrats circled around Donald Trump than anywhere else I can see in the world. So I guess they're not the globalists despite their globalist tendencies and their obvious one world government views and their support of the World Economic Forum. Why? Because China's the one you want us to look at? We should be questioning all of them, guys. China's involved with the World Economic Forum too, but it's just a selective choice to ignore or to pull punches for the people he wants you to support.
Working with China. The EU is actually working with China to get us distracted with the Russians off on our flank. Trump knows that, and it's got to stop now. I'll be covering this more today, 4 to 8 p.m. on the Sunday transmission. Please join me then, and please share the live feeds because you have all the power. You are the Paul Revere's. Follow me on X World Alex Jones and follow me on the Alex Jones Network.
Yeah, well, kind of hard. These people are out there every day. Here is David Icke Says Trump, Colt, Putin, Colt, Xi Jinping, Colt. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's to think about the obviousness of how all these governments, like, it's funny how he says, I'm not trying to make good guy, bad guy, and then literally goes, but China's the bad guy and the US is the good guy. It's just binary, guys. If you can't objectively recognize the kind of things that this current administration are doing, you'll never be honest about this, as we said during Biden's administration. But I think he's right. There is a level of this that goes across all these governments. Netanyahu, he says Starmer, Blair, all of them, all gophers for the hidden hand to impose its global agenda. And that's the thing, that if you really talk about a globalism idea, it's just weird how he only wants to point to the people that seem to be what U.S. government wants to be pointed at. And he goes on to say, if you think any one of them is your savior, then you have got no chance of understanding what is happening. Like Alex Jones. He says, Trump knows. Trump does what he's told. The same as all the others. Mr. Big Man, Mr. Anti-Globalist, talking about Jones, in his short trousers and school cap saying, yes, sir, no, sir, while claiming to be against those that he dare not disobey. He's just a gopher that they will back, destroy, or take out, depending only on what he best serves their interests. Now, aside from the specific opinions he has of what they'll do and not do, it's easy to see the larger picture he's making there. And I simply said, this guy's utterly lost the plot. Maybe by design, that's worth considering. But can anyone else identify the gigantic genocidal elephant in the room here? Can anyone else note the gaping chasm? And yes, I corrected the gaping. I think it was autocorrect, by the way, but I'll own it in case I've just put an extra P in there. But note the gaping chasm of an omission in this very selective rant. Demand integrity, call out its absence, guys. The point, Israel on one obvious front, but just the U.S. government in everything that they're currently doing. Or how about the most obvious genocide we've seen in a global sense in a long time, which was the vaccine deployment that Donald Trump pushed more than anybody. Or rather supports in regard to the thing he's still taking and giving to people. But you could argue that from Biden's administration, they did the largest thrust of the coercive measures. I would agree with that. But you see, this is how the two-party game works. It's an illusion, and both sides build to the real point. Now, watch Nate. Says, so you're admitting that you're totally full of SHIT. And it says, well, stop World War III. Vote Trump in 2024 if you want to live. Right. So was that wrong, or did Trump fail? I mean, how were you framing that? But you see, it's just about a hype. Remember, he said, if we can keep him alive, all these people will go to jail like this. And I said the same thing. August 23rd. They were saying Obama and Clinton and all of them are going to jail. Big information. Excuse me. And as Dissenter News points out, well, he said back in 2024, well, if we can keep Trump alive, he'll kind of prosecute Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Fauci and Hillary, even though they're mostly all on his side right now. Every time you look. Now, on the 11th, or rather, just make a point to start. We're starting at the 10th, but on this last segment, the real point that I want to reiterate that I think it's like I said before. Look at the scene you're staring at here, guys. Now, do you remember what they said about Amalek? Right, I mean, basically the point is from a biblical sense to just kill everything, from donkeys to children to everything, right? And one of the biblical passages, there's not one stone on top of another stone. Look, they are quite literally bombing to such a continual degree that there's not a single building or seemingly a single stone on top of a stone. That's not by accident, guys. And on top, like I said, they'll literally tell you that. I'll play one in a second. So what I'm trying to show you here, and it says an apocalyptic scene from Jabalia, northern Gaza. Remember that original bombing in Jabalia that was supposed to be for that one guy? They killed 400 people that not even Wolf Blitzer could stomach. And they said, well, we thought a guy was there. Okay, how many times in a row did that happen? The point is that even if they gave them everything, even if they literally said, okay, Palestine, here's half of Israel, here's everything, here's all of Israel, we'll move somewhere else. If Trump made that happen, you still would go, but then he just committed genocide for 8 months. The idea that we can't think, like, there's no way you just go, well, he ended it, okay, so we ignore the, like I said before, if you wanted to say in the first so many months, if he took 3 months, and then finally was like, wait, we can't support this anymore. They're doing genocide. I could argue that maybe he just wasn't. The ultimate point is these had more than enough time. has doubled down over and over with funding, with support, with lies, with deals, with Jared Kushner, everything. So he is a co-belligerent. Donald Trump, just like Biden, the U.S. government as a whole, is committing a genocide. So just because they decide to try to end it in a different way, even though that's not what's happening, by the way, does not mean they're not guilty of that. And does not mean, as plenty have pointed out, that we should go, yay! It's a somber, positive end if it stops, to say, thank God it finally stopped. But you don't start doing celebrations because you just watched one of the worst things you've ever seen, if not the worst we've ever seen in our lives. And by the way, it stops, and now you go through 6 months of people still dying because they've starved to death, and many of them, just like we saw during the Holocaust, no matter what, unless very carefully treated, will end up starving anyway. And plenty of overlaps of people with diseases and lost limbs. But yeah, let's give them all the credit for something that, again, they also didn't even do. So making that point's important. But as Mehdi Hassan points out, peace deal. Look at what they left behind. Some peace they gave them, they've successfully destroyed all of Gaza. Now they're just pushing it into the last phase. Well, what we saw on the 10th, 11th, was this kind of absurd push. And it started with the Israeli government. I can prove that. Ben Shapiro says, everyone who was screaming about genocide disappeared as soon as the deal was put on the table. No, they didn't, you moron. Literally didn't. I'm right here talking about it. So was everybody. The point was, we weren't just going to go, yay, they did it. Good job, Trump, because you pretended to put a deal on the table, let alone even got one after committing genocide. Every single one of these Zionist propagandists and those blindly repeating them are pushing the same false talking point that parrots exactly, near word for word, by the way, what the Israeli government first posted. All while Israel continues to bomb Gaza to the very moment I posted this. Mike the Knife points out, every single one of the Zionist propagandists, it's a meme from Office Space. If you could stop noticing, that'd be great. Here is Mike Cernovich. Says the quote, genocide, that's all you need. I mean, guys, really? In quotes? My God. These people need to be remembered for exactly what they are. The genocide is ending, but the college kids aren't celebrating in streets. The math is not mathing. God, how embarrassing. I said, you mean aside from Israel never even slowing down their bombing in Gaza? You are all revealing either that you are bought off or that you're fair weather influencers saying what 1,000 other people already stupidly and incorrectly repeated from the Israeli government posts. Just, seeing it getting reach and going, I want to say the same thing and just parroting it out. They all do that. How embarrassing. These are things that should be hanging around their chest for the rest of their lives. Michael, you're in great company, Cernovich. Here's Michael Rappaport. The ceasefire is underway now. It's actually happening. You effing lowlifes have been calling for it. Why aren't you celebrating? Same old thing. Gives pictures to people. And I said again, you mean aside from the ongoing Israeli bombing of the civilians that never even slowed down? This is Sky News reporting this. This is on the 9th. We reported on the 10th. Provably bombing. I can prove to you that regardless of the claims that happened, up until the 11th, up until in regard to today, we'll get into it, slightly more nuanced. We'll show you exactly what's happening. There is no ceasefire. Here is Laura Ingraham on the 10th. Gazans are finally returning home after President Trump's. It's just wild to me. They just parrot what they're told. They don't even know what's going on. And in fact, the very areas they keep pointing to on these stretches are one of the places they were getting bombed on the day she's posting this. And as she says, we're finally returning home after Trump's historic peace deal. Well, guess what? Even if it was a deal, and even if it was actually done, they weren't being allowed home because you don't even know what you're talking about. I can prove to you, like we'll get to in a second, that they literally still occupy more than 50% of the entire area and are not even allowed to go back to those areas or they'll get shot, which, by the way, is a direct violation of the agreement. They don't care about any of this. Laura Ingraham doesn't even know or care about it. POTUS delivered it. The only American president who could bring both sides of the table. Both sides? You mean Netanyahu and Trump? And then the idea that they claim both sides, well, the deal was with Hamas, but Israel says they have to be gone before they can finish the deal. It's a cartoon. And I said, you mean aside from his administration's 8 months of funding, obfuscating, and committing genocide? Sure. Woohoo, Trump. Also, Israel's still bombing Gaza, so you're ridiculous. This person, over a march of over 500,000 people in London for Palestine, sent a clear message that the movement will not end with the ceasefire. See, if you're not a complete clown, you might have already been aware, or a liar for Zionism, that these people have been protesting for the Palestinian rights since they've been taken from them, which did not start on October 7th. You see, this is the game they're playing. So they're saying, look, if there is a ceasefire, which we didn't, at this point, we can't even prove is actually happening, then we will say good, but we're still protesting for Palestinian statehood rights, for self-determination, which none of them exist within even the agreement they're making. The 20-point plan has no place for Palestinians, guys. It's wild. This person says, thanks for confirming that 2 years of ceasefire now is one big lie. All they're showing is their utter stupidity. This person, 42,000 followers. So the ceasefire is you can't have a ceasefire, but also demand rights for people? Are you claiming the ceasefire, which is not even an end to the war, by the way, just a ceasefire momentarily, which I guarantee will not stop? That you see the point? Again, it could be both. They could be both stupid and dishonest, but you can shake your pick. It's everywhere you look right now. Gunther Eagleman, perfect example of both stupidity and dishonesty. He literally goes, mic drop. These are such children. All these large influencers at the top of this paradigm right now are just embarrassingly childish. This is Greta Thunberg, a meme. She goes, we need to stop the Gaza war. Trump says, just did. Okay, not true. Not even remotely. Even if there was a ceasefire, these people don't even understand what they're reporting on. But she goes, no, not you, which, by the way, isn't happening. I mean, other than a joke that was going around on a satire post that people were being made fun of, there is not an example that I can see of people going, we don't want this if Trump offered it. That is the way they project each other. I'm willing to bet you it exists somewhere. But if you think for 1 second that anybody who actually cared about Palestinian rights is out there going, no, not unless somebody else puts it forward. These are the childish team sport politics pointing at each other. But you point to a meme somebody made and mic drop? Yeah, to him, apparently. That's how dumb these people are. Propaganda and Co. on the other side of the conversation. Zionists will post pictures like this and be like, what genocide? This is literally posted by however you pronounce this guy's name, 61,000 followers. Very, very, very much an Israeli Zionist supporter. His name's Ben Tel Aviv. He says, may the entire world remember this lesson forever. Of course. Hold on. Let's find out what that says. Seeing as how it doesn't seem that they want you to see it. The people of Israel are alive, it says. Okay. The people of Israel are alive. Well, what he's showing you is everyone in Palestine is dead. So he's saying, may the entire world remember this lesson forever. Now, look, let's just even say that every single lie that they put forward, which were provably lies about October 7th, were true. Your argument is, you did this to us, therefore we committed genocide against you. I mean, is there any just confusing that? We flattened everything of Gaza. Don't forget the lesson. That we will happily commit a crime against you if you commit a crime against us. Yes, we get that. Now, the real question is, did they lie about October 7th, which you can easily prove? So all he's really admitting is that we will happily commit a genocide and then lie about it because we claim you started it. What genocide? You see, even within their view, they're still lying to you because they know they can't pretend that they committed genocide. They don't care if you see it, though. Here's Arsen Ostrovsky, the fake human rights lawyer I point out all the time. He says, so just to be clear, Hamas could have handed over all the hostages in 24 hours this whole time to end the war? Yes, it was always that simple. You realize he knows that's not true, right? All these people know these guys are willfully dishonest. Now, you may argue that he's doing so because he believes he's on the right side of history, like he's right, and that he has to fight all these evil, lying Palestinian supporters, so he has to do this to convince you of the truth, even though he's lying to do so. I guarantee you that's a huge part of what happens in the partisan game. They believe the left's doing it, so we have to lie for the truth. How long? I've been pointing that out. I mean, remember I point to the Newt Gingrich post or the interview where way back when he made that point, I'm going to go with what they think versus what the facts are. That's what you're seeing. That's everyone now. They convince themselves individually that they all lie. So I have to lie for the interest of my side. It's how this goes today. The point, as this person rightly posed from the Times of Israel, we've shown you 1,000 times, the Times of Israel reported themselves that we later found out that Hamas had offered October 9th and the 10th, 2 and 3 days after October 7th, 2023, to release all of their hostages in exchange for the IDF not entering the Strip. And then, by the way, there was probably 7 examples of that after that. And they turned it down every single time. Remember what I've shown you every time? This is just one of them I can get to pop up. This is from the CBC News. They're interviewing this guy, who you remember. And at the time, he was working for the Israeli government. And he said, defeating Hamas is priority. Everything else is secondary. That's not confusing. They're saying the hostages aren't our most important point, right? It's pretty simple. So, oh wait, was it this one? Did I just have something else open? Huh. Anyway, that's weird. So anyway, the point though is overall. Oh yeah, it was right there. That's weird. So we're back to this. Knowing that when he goes, oh, they could have just let him go. He knows very well that they were deliberately not doing so. And on top of that, they've killed more than anybody. And everyone can prove that. As every hostage tells you that so many Hamas members were defending them with their own bodies. It's just so frustrating that this stuff can be so provable that it comes from Israeli hostages or rather IDF members. And we still have to fight against willful deceiving people like this. This guy knows he's lying to you and doesn't care. Why? Because they're liars, right? We know this.
Let me preface these remarks with I never, ever believe Israeli figures.
To accentuate the point, you got played it 100 times, but it's, the point is everyone who works with them knows what they're doing and what they are. Zionists that we're talking about. So here is one. This is that woman we've referenced many times. This is not unique, by the way. She's in the Knesset, like their Congress. And just this is not exactly what she says, but it is a fair paraphrase. I just don't like people putting quotes when it's not exact. She's the Israeli Minister of Social Equality, and you can see it right here, just to give you the right here. It's just simply saying, I'm personally proud of the ruins of Gaza, and that every baby, even 80 years from now, she says, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did when their families were murdered, raped, and their civilians were kidnapped. Now, who knows if she's talking about what they're doing in Gaza or what she claims were done to them, right? What they claim is done to them, that didn't happen. She literally goes on to say babies decapitated and raped. None of that happened. You can literally prove those things did not happen. So maybe she's talking about Gaza. But either way, the point is I'm personally proud of what they did in Gaza. And that 80 years from now, they'll tell people what the Jews did. That's what she's saying. How do you misunderstand that? They're proud of the destruction they wrought on innocent people. This is where we are, guys. One of the many examples. Look at 2023. Look at the life that was there. Look at it now. That's a genocide. There's no way around it, guys. Everyone in the world sees this. Now getting into the current reality, this was on the 11th, right? So the point was we knew that there wasn't, on the 10th, they were bombing. We proved that at the time. We can prove it right now. You can ask Rock if you want. Not that proves anything. Ryan Grimm says, in the Tal al-Zatar neighborhood in Jabalia in northern Gaza, that flat area we just showed you, sources say Israeli armed gangs operating with the support of Israeli quadcopters attacked Al-Adwa hospital and are detaining staff. This is while they claim there's a ceasefire, and they're all going, why aren't you cheering, you liars? Okay, so not only were they bombing, but they had their ISIS gangs going around and doing what they were already doing. This is easily, we'll go through more information, but this is all going through the timeline right now. It's on the 11th. And I said, there is no ceasefire just like every time before this. Mohammed Shihada on the 11th. Since the ceasefire started, Israel's murdered 35 Gazans, wounded 72 others in the past 24 hours alone. Says, it looks like Al Jazeera. And again, these are reported from their own, like what you can see as we showed you with Sky News on the 9th and the 10th was them bombing in the areas they were trying to flee from. And you can go on and prove from many different reports they were continuing to bomb. What kind of ceasefire is this? Why is this not reported in any mainstream media, he asks. Now, interestingly, now I'm just quickly going through this, what I just said there, usually, the point is yesterday or day before yesterday, we went through all that. This was CNN, by the way. It was day before yesterday. Airstrikes continue in Gaza after ceasefire deal approved. Guess what, though? Because they're all complicit. That's no longer there. Shocking. the video is no longer available. Why? Because they were, and you could prove it. And everybody else was very clearly showing that, including the video that they literally were including before it was removed. Now, this MSN site often reposts these corporate platforms, and I guess they didn't get the memo to take it down. It's right there. Israel warplanes launched airstrikes in southern Yemen. This is October 10th. I was just telling you that. So just to make it clear, it's undeniable that they were bombing after the ceasefire. They just have a narrative for why. Now, remember, what we showed you yesterday was the reality was that Netanyahu had told them not to stand down, and that was reported by the Israeli government. In the ceasefire negotiation, the point was, or rather the mediators, and there's one of them, that they knew this. This was reported publicly, and none of the platforms, so mainstream or alternative mainstream, reported it. None of them, even though it came directly from from high-level sources. You must understand what that shows you. They don't want you to see it, or they don't want to show it because they don't want to be seen for showing it. Gareth Ike, because Israel never gave an F about the hostages, it says if they did, they would not only have got them back a year ago, but they would have not have allowed them to be taken in the first place because there was Hannibal directive. They did, provably. As we reported 100 times over from Israeli media, from people on the ground, from generals, from colonels, all of which have said, yes, that was a Hannibal that was ordered, meaning that they were killing their own people before they could be taken. It's a provable fact. Now, this is an Israeli hostage negotiator. Listen to what he has to say.
In May of 2024, President Biden then presented what I thought was a bad deal. It was a partial deal that would not end the war and would not bring all the hostages home. So in July, August, hostage families approached me and asked me if I could help negotiate a better deal. I contacted Hamas interlocutors that I've been in contact with now for 18 years and asked if Hamas was willing to make a full comprehensive deal at that time. I spoke to Israeli military people and asked them how long it would take Israel to withdraw from Gaza, and they told me 3 weeks. So I told Hamas, would you be willing to make a deal that in 3 weeks the war would end, all the hostages would be released, more than are there right now, and Israel would withdraw from Gaza. There'd be security guarantees and other elements of the deal, and Hamas said yes after the leadership approved it, and I received it in writing in Arabic and in English, transmitted it to the Israeli negotiators, who told me that it was a great deal, but the prime minister refuses to end the war.
Okay, that was publicly reported, like from the highest level sources. We all accepted it. The deal's good, but Netanyahu refuses to end the war. We told you that on the 10th. This is from the Israeli negotiator. And we can understand how ridiculous this is. This is public information. Have you heard it from CNN, Fox News? No, they're waxing about the glory of Trump's deal and how ending and all the Palestinians love Donald Trump. That's what they're doing.
I tried to get the Americans directly engaged. The deal went to the desk of President Biden, but his main point man on the negotiations, Brett McGurk, refused to look at it.
Oh, no, but I'm sorry. I got it. I believe he's talking about from Biden still. The understanding the point is the same today. Like we already went through this recently with the reports coming from the people involved saying that Netanyahu, and we just went over this. I'll include my October 10th show.
His own negotiators told me that they were very frustrated. I was invited to Qatar and presented it to the Qataris, but they all told me that they couldn't do anything unless the Americans bought into it, which didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So the deal that was being done today could have been done last September.
So that's important to understand, right? And again, the understanding that the deal, whatever they're claiming was, didn't actually happen for the same reason he just reported then. So he's saying former Israeli hostage negotiator says ceasefire deal agreed upon this week could have been done years ago. He says that he had Hamas agree to a deal releasing all the hostages, but the prime minister refuses to end the war. This is not a new circumstance, guys. And the same point can be made. That's why it's the same today for 6 other examples where they had the reality there. Remember Blinken, like 6 different times, probably I think 4, said all Hamas can accept it and this will all end. Everyone's on board. And then that same day, Hamas would be like, good, we accept. And then Israel would deny it. And I mean, like in a public fashion. And then Blinken would go, Hamas violates the deal. And they just think you're that stupid. Constantly, Netanyahu would make sure this didn't stop because they need, I mean, here's a better point. Don't forget that Hamas, one of these times, because they keep screaming at Hamas being out of the picture, said, fine, take us off the deal. We will remove ourselves from the circumstance. Twice, Israel and the U.S. inserted that point back into the deal. They need the excuse of Hamas to carry out what they're doing. That's the point. Here's what I was saying earlier. Sammy Obeid says, my little brother in Gaza sent me this. They can't return to their homes because beyond the yellow line is now fully occupied by Israel. Look at that. That's like 80% of the whole area. This is classic ethnic cleansing and a land grab, pushing indigenous people into a smaller and smaller corners while we try to act like we're evolved since the 1800s. This person says, Jesus Christ, shut the F up. You guys started a war. You guys. So every Muslim, every Palestinian, these guys are disgusting in every possible way. And it says by raping a bunch of ravers. So first of all, the rape claims didn't even come in until after the fact, and it wasn't the ravers, and nobody raped anybody other than Israelis in regard to Palestinians. I guarantee there's still probably someone every time in the chat going, yeah, terrible. You prove it. You can prove it. Haaretz and everybody else has verified to a T that these lies were upset. On top of the fact that the woman in the gray pants they all pointed to is home and that she wasn't raped. It's just insane, the level of lies they push out. Then he goes, and then got your ASS's kit. Oh, is that what happened? You mean aside from no discernible change in regard to Hamas? But he goes, Hamas is the least sympathetic cause of all time. Oh, no, who cares about that? We're talking about Palestinians and occupation of their territory. But see, him conflating them all simply shows you the way they view it. There is nobody innocent in Gaza. And they'll tell you that straight up. The point, though, is that they're occupying the territory. That is not the reality of what they agreed to. And on top of that, this is on the 10th, the 11th posted on the 10th from Zion Observer. Israel announced they will continue to murder anyone fishing, swimming, or diving despite the ceasefire. In the maritime area. So that's a small point, but realize it's just additional. There's all these different elements. So if people decide to go in the water, they can kill them. Now, how much you want to bet? They could simply argue that happened, therefore they violated the ceasefire. This is how this goes every time. All we're showing you is this is not a real ceasefire in any discernible way. On the 11th, they posted a video of kidnapping 3 Palestinians. Ernest Tarawi, by the way, has been on this from the very beginning, and they've even used his information at the UN. It was posted on Instagram by an Israeli soldier. But ceasefire, though, promise. Here, this is the West Bank. We have a ceasefire. Why are you marching? Now, you understand the same point we made about the last one. The West Bank is part of they're Palestinians. So if a ceasefire with Hamas or whatever they're claiming they're doing a ceasefire with, and they claim that the same thing exists in the West Bank, that's what they've said, which is mostly not true. Then when they ceasefire, but don't even stop over there, by the way, and then go after the West Bank, which they do, and they do it every time, they're just violating the ceasefire. Israeli occupation forces stormed Al Jazeera's office in Ramallah, the West Bank, on top of going after journalists. But they're still demolishing homes. They're still rounding people up in the West Bank. They do this every single time. And so a point is, why aren't you celebrating? Because nothing has changed. Ryan Grimm. This is regard to Lebanon, by the way, which is relevant. It's not the same conversation, but it's relevant to show what they do. In Lebanon, October 11th. So also, by the way, every time they were even have to restrict their actions, they just dump it all into Lebanon, Syria, and go after whoever else they can all the time. Same thing happened the last time. Ask Craig Murray. They never even tried to initiate the ceasefire in Lebanon. Nobody even called it out other than people like Craig Murray. In southern Lebanon, Israeli troops, by the way, which they're illegally occupying southern Lebanon, Israeli troops may no longer occupy towns on foot, but for residents, the war continues overhead and from nearby hilltops. Drones, sniping, sniper stationed, and they're shooting people in Lebanon. Yeah, that happens every day. And as Ryan Grimm says, that's a ceasefire that's nobody's idea of a ceasefire. He's not talking about the Gaza ceasefire. A lot of people misunderstood him. He's simply saying, look, this is what Israel thinks a ceasefire is in Lebanon. They're supposed to be having one. They do this everywhere they exist, guys. It's Zionism. This person called Let's Theorize. The IDF has launched a broad wave of attacks on Lebanon. That's my point. So October 10th, they just start bombing Lebanon too. They were already, but it's an increase in Lebanon because I guess they just need to kill people. As he says, literally just addicted to killing and destroying. Tariq points this out in regard to Lebanon as well. The overnight Israeli airstrikes into the 11th in southern Lebanon killed a Syrian national and wounded 6 other people, according to media. And it simply says, so Israel bombed a bunch of municipal bulldozers to prevent the Lebanese people from rebuilding what Israel destroyed in southern Lebanon. They do this every time. Israel's just going to keep the entirety of southern Lebanon in a state of de-development, as we all know where that leads over time, just like with Gaza, because they covet it. And they already have lands and like they've had conferences where they've put Hebrew names on settlements all over Lebanon. They have plans to take it. They're public about that. Now, on the 11th, Israel already said we're not going to participate in the Gaza summit on Monday. As Daniel McAdams says, they are going to start the slaughter back up as soon as they get their hostages back, which, as far as I know, might have already happened. And I want to be clear, they weren't ever stopping it. They just reduced the ongoing bombings and attacks. There is not even a question about it, he says, and the U.S. media won't report at all about it because they're owned by Ellison. Well, RT reports on this is from yesterday, Donald Trump's post here. Trump's flying to Israel soon. Will address the Israel parliament. Of course, because that's very common to always there's like this interchanging revolving door of U.S. politicians constantly in Israel. Surprise, surprise. RT reports U.S. releases official invite for signing of the Middle East peace plan. Venue, Egypt, multiple nations, including India, Japan, Spain, invited. Not Palestine. Of course not. Guess who else? Israel will not participate. Great. So the peace plan that everyone needs to agree to, Israel's not even going to show up. Because clearly they're all about peace, right? No, they've got designs for Lebanon, for Syria. They're ongoing their greater Israel occupation, the greater Israel genocide. I mean, you may not believe me. Let's touch back in a couple years and see what's happening next. How about we touch back in 6 months? How about you just effing look at what's happening right now and recognize that they're not even seeking peace? Okay, today, Kaylan Johnstone. Now, just in case all up until now you weren't, this is why it's important to watch the show and not just skim the title. This is today. There's no hiding this. He writes, this is the Israel defense minister on the 12th. Israel's great challenge after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza. You mean despite already grounding everything, right? This is just a lie. It's a narrative. Well, I mean, maybe not. Maybe they're just, are going to keep bombing the rebel until they kill every possible person they claim is Hamas. But it says directly by the IDF and through the international mechanism to be established under the leadership and supervision of the United States. Oh, okay. So you're totally not going to stop the entire thing. Like we told you they never were. Like they told you they wouldn't. How many times have we shown you Netanyahu, other Israeli government members saying, even once we exchange the hostages, we can't stop a war on Hamas? I'm not saying you should even agree. The point is they keep telling you that's what the agreement is between Hamas and Israel, and they keep going, well, we don't care. We're going to kill Hamas anyway. It's always been a game. And he goes on to say this is the primary significance of implementing the agreed upon principle of demilitarizing Gaza and neutralizing Hamas of its weapons. I have instructed the IDF to prepare for carrying out the mission. Great. So as Caitlin says, Israel's minister explicitly says the slaughter is going to resume after they get their hostages back. So you tell me what you're seeing. Drop site news. Now this gets into the ISIS overlap, which is very important. Armed clan kills prominent journalist. This is today. Journalist Saleh al-Jafarwi has been confirmed killed after his body was brought to Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza City. He was reportedly shot dead by members of the Dogmush clan, an armed group long at odds with Hamas. Right. Those are the groups, many ISIS linked, that are being funded by Israel. They are literally at odds with Hamas. And they're the ones currently running around that they're pointing to and going, look, Hamas is killing everybody by design. Heavy clashes broke out in Gaza City between the clan and security forces. General point is the reporting about how they're going, local police fighting with this group. They're not Gaza. They're not Hamas. They are people that are being fought by all of that. And yet they're still lying to you guys. This is a coordinated event. And this is where this comes into play. Can we all just finally admit that Israel is openly working with ISIS-linked groups? And hopefully also admit the long history of Israel and the U.S. government's collaboration with creation of ISIS and Al-Qaeda? Please, pretty please, can we just get past the lie about this? I mean, it's crazy that you can have it written by Haaretz and people still don't want to. Well, I mean, we know what's happening here. I mean, just by the way, I think you might have even seen yourself, save for the few things. Our account on Twitter has just been shoved off the algorithm cliff lately. I mean, we can't even get over a few thousand views with 77,000 followers on posts that are very irrelevant to the ongoing conversation. I mean, I even argue I was one of the earliest people to tweet about Donald Trump taking that shot. And it got like 17 views. I honestly don't care. I'm doing this for you guys, the people that are supporting this platform and the people that choose to come here to watch it. That's all I've ever cared about for probably the last 5 years. That's why I barely even engage in most of the comments after. It's just so much noise out there. But it's just important to point out. There's a reason that people that are actually doing objective, honest, real, sourced work just don't end up being the screaming idiot at the top, because they don't get, there's so many good people out there. Anyway, the point, it's quite obvious to see, as Haaretz will report, what's wrong with that? How Israel trained and armed an ISIS-linked Gaza militia. Very apparent. Here's the article for yourself. Please read this. It's not hard to understand. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu approved the secret operation to support a Palestinian militia to guard the humanitarian aid, all while concealing the truth from the public, that it's an ISIS-linked group. Which, if you remember, ISIS is ideologically counter to Hamas and everything about it. So you see, and the reason they're in Palestine is because of Israel cultivating this going back a long way. It's just painful that we have to play this game. Now, again, we talked about this back when they took over Syria. What'd you see? All their literal ISIS patch-wearing people that they rolled out to take over Syria. That's the U.S. and Israel. Now, all the American veterans out there who think you're supporting Trump, or maybe you support Biden. The point is the U.S. government. These people, I mean, the U.S. government is funding and working with, if not created, all of the points where maybe everything, there's a nuance to who and what was created, but origin point goes back to both of them. The point is that they're working alongside the people you thought you were dying to fight. And I mean, in a general sense, like, you as an entity, the military, but individuals, if you're still alive, very much did die in pursuit of that goal. And here they are being armed and funded. Jelani's 10 million bounty removed, and he's currently in a suit running Syria. How does that make you feel? Ryan Grimm says Israel's attempt to apply its divide and conquer approach to Gaza involved recruiting and arming ISIS-linked gangs and executing families that refused to go along. Yep. Now, with Israel's partial withdrawal, we are seeing the policy's desired outcome. More violence in Gaza and a divided population. See, what you're going to start to get, by the way, is people that are like, look, we don't even care. Let the U.S. take over. We're tired of starving to death. I want my children are dying. I don't even care at this point. And who can blame them? Same thing happens in Iran and over the years. Same thing happens in Venezuela. They literally use sanctions and coercive starvation tactics, knowing they know it's the U.S. And eventually they just, how many times have I played that clip from Rudy Giuliani saying that Iranians are selling their organs for food? This is how you create a good revolution. That's what he says. They know what they're doing. And they know those people know it's them, and they know they can push them to a point to where they literally don't care because their children are starving in front of them. That is the kind of evil we're dealing with. And then, of course, on top of that, the Zionists will laugh about it and make clips about it and wear their lingerie after they do it, right? Just a special kind of evil. But it says, but the national reconciliation is the opposite of the goal. They are literally, Israel should stop arming these gangs so a process of reconciliation can begin, but that's the opposite of what they want. It's impossible to miss if you're being honest. Now, here's to generally wrap up is the endpoint on the 11th, literally posting Visregrad, intelligence platform, literally reporting lies for Israel, and Elon Musk and Alex Jones and Laura Loomer will share this account without due diligence because that seems to be their job. And it says Hamas returns to the areas of Gaza. Israel, of course, has withdrawn from and starts rounding up people. I just see a bunch of people from quite a distance. Sure could be anything, couldn't it? On top of that, what we know for a fact is that this is, look, Hamas has demonstrated, whether you think good or bad, whatever you think about it, especially whether you ignore Israel's funding of it, which you can prove, that you can go over this from October 7th forward, let's say. And they've given every possible example and proven to you that they have went out of their way to not be what they claim they are, whether that's a lie or not. They've shielded them with their own bodies. They've kept the hostage or IDF members safe. The vast majority, if not all the people that were killed by IDF bombs or by Hannibal Directive. You can prove that today. On top of that, what did they say? What did they say? They told that woman, and that's an Israeli woman on Israeli media, saying they came in and said, don't worry, we're Muslims. We're not going to hurt you. Now, whether you think that's the case everywhere or not is irrelevant. That was something she reported on Channel 14 about what they said when they were there. So all this is to say, why in the world would they then rush in and just murder Palestinians? Maybe they did. You could decide. The evidence doesn't suggest that. And overall, we know for a fact that they're arming ISIS-linked gangs in order to do this so they can blame Hamas. And here is one of these propagandists that literally sets at the table. A lot of Gazans will get murdered over the next few days by Hamas. Okay. Because you think so? Or because you just believe the narrative about them? I mean, who knows? Overall, I think the sharing of this and the way it's being set up is in order to create that narrative for exactly what we're looking at. And then you get Brandon Tatum. Pay attention to who's not sharing and talking about this. Same thing. Now, first of all, because we showed it at the beginning, this is an old video. This is before the ceasefire. Secondarily, it's not Hamas. We're talking about the same groups, and we've talked about this many times over. Dinesh D'Souza, who's shown himself to be one of the most like aggressively, like disgustingly dishonest around this topic, speaks volumes. Hamas gets ready to execute 3 dissidents. Okay, let's just even be objective to say, who knows? Maybe they are and I'm wrong, right? How in the world do you think he knows that they're absolutely Hamas to the point to where he can report that and that he knows they're dissidents? You have to really think about that for a second. He does not know that. He's simply framing it the way either he just randomly decides to or that somebody wants him to. And of course, makes it going after Tucker wild. And again, Abed points out it's an old video before. Secondarily, these were collaborators with Israel that caused unmatched suffering for Palestinians. It's a very public conversation. These people are propagandizing you because that was the plan. And ideally, I think, or rather the way they wanted it to go was to be able to continue the genocide and blame them for it. Talk about evil. Drop site news. Israeli soldiers torched food, homes, and a critical sewage treatment plant in the wake of the ceasefire announcement, right? They realized it might happen, so let's just especially destroy a few more things just in case. Every single time. Took pictures of it, has a gasoline can, posted it, laughed about it. They know you see this and they don't care. What does that show you? They think they can get away with it. Maybe they will. Drop site news also reports the CNN reported that Israel will not, they said this publicly, will not release Dr. Hussein Abu Safia as part of the deal that they made with Hamas, even though he was supposed to be on the deal. They just, are allowed to just change the deal mid-deal because they can, apparently, and Hamas can't even agree to the deal without it being broken. Like, it's just, this is what happens every time. And Hamas can be like, breaker, deal breaker, you didn't agree. And then they'll be like, good, because that's what they want anyway. So often you'll find these small changes and Hamas just lets it continue because they do want an end to this, which seems pretty objectively obvious. And it says the eminent pediatrician was detained in December during Israel's raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital a long time ago. He's been held without charge ever since, after he refused to abandon his patients under siege. A Hamas official also told CNN that Israel will not free him from the hospitals, or from the director of the Gaza field hospital that he was. Drop site reporting shows negotiations over prisoner and captive lists are still ongoing. This was on the 10th. Israel will not release him, including the eminent pediatrician. There was one other point that I was going to read. I think that was it. There's one other point I was going to, the general point simply is that you're talking about a doctor. Verifiably so, not a radical person, not a member of Hamas, not any of the things they claim. And they will refuse to release him because, in my opinion, because he's an important doctor for children in particular. If you don't understand that by now, with what they've continued to do, targeting children in the genitals and the head, provably by endless amounts of doctors, then you just don't want to see it. Aviva Klampus, though, of course, comes in. This is what she tries to do in the midst of what's going on, right? With everything that's going on. This absolute propagandist who I've called out 100 times over, she comes out and says, she cites, first of all, the Israel government account, which says Philip Lazzarini, UNRWA's Commissioner General, has admitted there was no famine. Can you believe that they're still going this direction? There was no famine, enough food for everyone for 3 months. You see what I keep talking about? Instead of just saying they're not starving, they have to be so cartoonish. They claim, no, they're fed more than they've ever been fed before in their lives. I mean, it's just painful. And turns out, guess what? Surprise, surprise, that's not at all what they actually said. Do I even need to explain it? I mean, first of all, we can quite literally prove 100 times over from every genocide expert, from every famine expert, from the IPC, literally the groups that their job is to know these things are telling you we can see it. They're starving to death every day. They didn't say this, by the way. Is ready to go as soon as they get the green light. The same thing every time. No one's claiming the food's not sitting there. We know it is. We know Israel's keeping it from happening. They're literally standing in front of it. They're literally going, we're watching the settlers tear it off them and break them. And then Israel says, you can't bring in formula. You can't turn all the trucks around. You've got gauze in there. It's been provable from day one. And so they come out and they go, look, we are ready if you give us the green light. And they come out and seize on that in the midst of what's happening to claim yet again that there is no genocide, there is no famine. Think about how insane it is that you can have people like you two. You're not allowed to doubt historical events, well documented. And then, of course, hypocrisy, shocker. And in no way am I even calling for them to be censored, because really, we need to see this. People need to remember that they were doing this. Here's Ryan Grimm pointing out just one example, and it's a good example because it shows you another lie on top of it. And here, I'll even grab this, by the way, because it's important to make sure you know this. And this goes back, what, 3 months, 4 months, maybe even more. IPC, it's called the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. Guys, it is quite literally their job to classify the levels of famine. And they're telling you these people are right now absolutely in a famine. This is back before. Famine is imminent, as 1.1 million people experience catastrophic food insecurity. They're in full-blown famine. They said they already made the announcement. It's just, there's not a word for it. But here's Ryan Grimm. The New York Times and the Free Press, Barry Weiss, went into a week-long meltdown arguing that this child, an image of this young boy named Mohammed, wasn't a fair representation of the terror of starvation in Gaza, because they claimed he had other medical conditions, which I believe he did. And our whole point was like, so you're okay with starvation if the idea that it's somehow not important because the kid's got other problems is so disgusting. But on top of that, it says, we spoke to the family and they shared before and after photos that make it thoroughly clear that it was starvation and malnutrition and not his underlying medical condition that drove his deterioration. We hope Barry Weiss will apologize and correct the record, but I know we probably all know she won't. This child starved to death. This is what he looked like before October 7th. That's the child before he passed. I'm sorry to show you. And they have the nerve to stand up and tell you there's no famine, to stand up and try to tell you that they're lying about this child dying. People like Barry Weiss, who now controls a major media platform despite being one of the dumbest people in the room. That's what they're doing, guys. Owen Jones. On other small examples, I shouldn't even call them small, but just in regard to the larger game they're playing with their lives. Other examples of this stuff. This is Dominic pointing. The full force of Israel's PR machine will be deployed over the coming days of hostage releases and Trump visit. Meanwhile, Israel's banning press interviews with the families of released Palestinian prisoners. This is in a country that prides itself on democracy and press freedom, right? Well, as Owen Jones points out, Palestinian hostages have been tortured, starved, deprived of medical care, and raped by Israeli soldiers. Probably the easiest thing to prove in the entire conversation. I'll include the Israel human rights group called B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group, who has an article called Welcome to Hell, the Israeli prison system as a network of torture camps, and in particular gets into the said Yemen rape case. Just one of an endless amount of examples showing you what they actually did, accusing them of that which they are guilty. But Jones says this is why Israel state is banning journalists from talking to them, because they're coming out emaciated, tortured, missing limbs, like every other time before this. Jeremy Scahill says Israel allowed the filming and broadcast of images intended to degrade and humiliate Palestinian prisoners set for release in the exchange of captives. This explicitly violates the term of the agreement, but because they'll say, oh, we didn't mean to, it wasn't intentional. Just like last time, by the way, and in reverse, too. It says the exchange of hostages and prisoners will be done according to the mechanism agreed upon through the mediators and through the ICRC without any public ceremonies or media coverage. And what they do? None of that. So far, anyway. Doing it through their own, marching them out, all tied and blindfolded. They do it on purpose, guys. Now, to make the point, or where is it? Maybe, I think it's in this point right here. The point is they did, fair, you can point out that last time, oh, it is right here. Job site news. Says in February 2025, Israel postponed the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners after 6 Israeli captives were freed, claiming Hamas led degrading ceremonies. Remember? That demeaned their hostages, and they used that to deny releasing their own, a violation. Well, and you could argue they did. Obviously, it seemed to be pretty benign to me, and I really do agree with that. That's what I genuinely think. I would think it either way, but you could argue it. Fine. They felt they violated it. Western media echoed the outrage, right? Calling the scenes fighters handing captives to the Red Cross before cheering crowds savage. Here's the footage of Palestinians being rounded up before this last week's release. The point, as always, is hypocrisy. And at the very least, that they are just as bad as what they accuse the other side of doing. And just watching it for you. They're marching them out, making a whole parade of it, filming it, laughing at them. And it's the same point. Blindfolded, wrapped. Right there. See? Just trying to rush through it. The point is the same. Scenes document the abuse inflicted by the Israeli prison administration on Palestinian prisoners who are scheduled for release as part of the deal. Yeah, well, this verifiably violates the deal, but, they did it first, so who cares, right? That's what they're going to say, I imagine. So here is disgustingly what Jared Kushner had to say on the 11th. Instead of replicating the barbarism of the enemy, you chose to be exceptional. You chose to stand for the values that you stand for, which is a dumb thing to say because that doesn't mean anything when you think about it. I couldn't be prouder to be friend of Israel. Well, so my point is if they have no values, then they're standing for no values. The point, though, is he's trying to go, you guys are the good ones. They're the bad ones. So instead of replicating the barbarism of the enemy, are you kidding me? First of all, you can prove that everything they claimed happened didn't even happen. But they sure as hell replicated all the lies, didn't they? Israel's genocide, Omar Badar points out, didn't just bomb civilians indiscriminately, but rape Palestinian prisoners on video, right? But didn't happen in reverse. You can prove that today. And targeted toddlers with sniper fire to their head and testicles. Provably, according to doctors that watched it, who reported on it, who helped them. These are facts documented by doctors and human rights organizations, and apparently that's behavior Kushner admires. How disgusting. Well, this is important. Netanyahu got booed by 100,000 Israelis after Witkoff brought his name up in Israel. This is not new. We've been telling you from the very beginning. He was hated in Israel before October 7th, guys. They hate him more now because he's allowed their families to die. Whether or not they hate Palestinians, they know what Hannibal directive it is. They know what happened. They how many times I told you they're protesting through the streets? Bring our families home. And then people like Aviva Klumpus will go, see, they're demanding you guys in the U.S. and they're demanding Hamas, bring them home. No, they're not. Maybe in the beginning to some degree. They're saying, Netanyahu, bring them home. Take whatever deal's being offered and accept. And they would say no. Over and over and over, and then frame their outrage as support, because that's how disgusting this is. So here is what they were, even watch the way Witkoff responds. It's weird.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh, he said, oh.
Okay. To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, let me just finish my thought. I was in the trenches, guys. Let me just finish my thought. I was in the trenches with the Prime Minister. Believe me, he was a very important part here.
They don't. It's objectively clear. By the way, you could look at polls as well. They really don't like him.
The Prime Minister and his staff run.
I mean, let's say a majority. There's always people that do. There's always some. Largely the religious Zionist crowd. What's funny is even some of them hate him because he's not going far enough.
Dermer included, have both.
See, You tried to talk over them. Do it.
Okay. Okay. Have both sacrificed so much for this country and devoted their lives to the service of Israel. Their dedication to the history and destiny of this nation stands out tonight. They've given everything, their time, their energy, and their hearts, to building a safer, stronger future for the Jewish people. Their commitment to this country has never...
I mean, you also notice that they're not clapping for any of this. Now, I'm not saying that's because they don't in some way support the larger agenda, but they're, like as somebody just said, they're just not buying this. They're not buying this framing. And this is why I think we need to realize this is not a uniquely U.S. thing right now.
Wavered, and it never will. We thank you. The president thanks you. Thank you.
So as I simply said, the whole world is being gaslit. We're being gaslighted, guys. They're trying to shove this in your face, just like they do with left-right paradigm stuff in this country. You know, they just scream the thing and just pretend that everyone agrees, and they're just trying to convince you that's what the reality is. It's not. People, the world is being forced into this because this is what the power wants. Just see that. Wake up. Call it out. Because this is not what the world wants, guys. We're not genocidal maniacs, but they are. And they're just trying to force that square peg into the round hole. Now, we're going to end today with this simple point and one video from Kathleen Austin Fitts that makes this undeniably clear. And not even to make it about, like, I guess that you can call like the trope, like if you don't stop it here, it'll be on your shows next, which is overused. But pretty clearly, I think we can see this in an abstract way, even more specific if you want to be real about how that's very much what's happening right now. And it's not that like that it's, you know, it's not about necessarily even like one force, which you could make the case. But it's simply about the idea that if we allow this to finish, if we allow this to actually continue and they gain what they want from this, the reality, it changes everything. It already has, in our minds, even in the other direction, quite frankly. But the point is that this will ultimately come to you next in a more of an abstract way, but in general, because if they know they can get away with this, they can get away with anything. But as Rand Paul says, just to make it in a real sense, to hopefully reach some of these conservatives, remember as they tried to convince you they were going to work with him? We're going to end the Fed. Right. Or how about the idea of Massey and all they tried to like absorb all these people. They just never had any intention because those people have integrity. I honestly don't even know somebody in this field for as long as Ron Paul who has maintained his principles. I mean, I don't know anybody. Ron Paul is a special figure in this conversation. Just because he has maintained his principal beliefs in the viper's den and well past that when he has every opportunity, every motivation to maybe just be more amenable to one side or the other, and he has stood his ground. He says President Trump is ushering a golden age, all right, just not the one MAGA voters were expecting. Instead of getting government off our backs and no more wars, Americans have been saddled with warmongering on a daily basis and a turbocharge of government spending, debts, and inflation. How about that, Doge? All the lies. We just move on, right? It's all about digital IDs and digital control. That's why digital services was what they pretended Doge was. Same thing, guys. It says those who want to protect themselves from Trump's reckless government policies are piling into gold and sending the price to an all-new high. So, you know, at least one positive silver lining to it. At the end of the day, it's just we need to start being honest about what it is that's actually happening. And it doesn't have to be about Trump versus Biden or anything else. It's just your government. The government is putting you in this position and is making it clear that they do not care about your interests. If we do not do something to stop what's happening in Gaza, in the United States, in Chicago, and I'm not talking about violence in any context, about asserting your rights. If we do not do something, at what point do we recognize that there's just no turning back? We've seen historical events like that. I mean, I make a case in a small point about like a health-wise point about glyphosate. I mean, there were plenty of people who were out there going, no problem. This is going to kill us. This is going to harm the planet. Oh, you're a lefty, or oh, you're, you know, whatever. You just lie, ignore. There's no going back from that. Not to get into it now if you haven't seen the show about it, but the point is the glyphosate is provably, it's in the air you're breathing right now. It's in the clothes you're wearing. Cotton in particular, it's so overwhelming, guys. It's in craft beers in Germany. It's in organic wines in Napa Valley, to the point to where they just still call it organic because, well, it's everywhere now. So technically it is, I guess. I mean, It's a small example, or large, but a individual example of how these things work. We had an opportunity to maybe do something about it, and we were distracted by other things. And so now that genie's out of the bottle. Who knows what that means for our species? We'll never even truly know because it's so ubiquitous that we'll just think that's what's going on. We have to be able to recognize the moments we're in and be able to see what we can change. And if you just get caught in the partisan game, they'll always keep you looking down the road, like in a tunnel vision way. Yeah, have some foresight, but look at where you're standing. Recognize that you're on a cliff instead of looking way over the way. Look at how nice it looks over there. You're right there. So as Sense Receptor points out, the Gaza method, what has come for Palestinians will soon come for all of us. He writes, describing how the violence, AI-targeted systems, drone warfare, biometric refugee camps, land grabs, digital IDs being deployed in Gaza will eminently enslave the Western world. Important to think about, guys. I mean, I don't want to end on a doomsday type note. My opinion as always is the only reason that I think. This is only happening because we are changing things. You're out there making a difference. They see that you see it. They're trying to, work in with trying to kind of figure out a way to get that to a point to where it won't matter anymore. I've said that so many times. So it's not. It's ultimately a positive reality that we are changing the world to such a degree that the power structures are getting uncomfortable, but still recognize that that's a precipice. It's knife's edge. We're watching the dangerous things build. So find that opportunity. Find the moment to, find faith in yourself. Realize that you deserve better than this, that you are better than this, and that you need to fight for it or you'll lose it. So I'll leave you with the wise words of Catherine Austin Fitts, and I will see you very soon. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Is absolutely extraordinary that the world would let this happen. And they would let this happen when literally you have the U.S. president announcing he's going to do a hotel and turn this into a resort, and his son-in-law is saying he's going to do a waterfront development, and you have Netanyahu floating, development plans showing this new wonderful Gaza. Now, I've always assumed they need the land, the water, the oil and gas, the resources to do the control grid, because that's an area where they want to do a lot of infrastructure for the control grid. But you're literally saying, okay, we want the land, we want the oil, we want the water, so we're just going to exterminate the people there and take it. And not only that, we're going to cut all of the surrounding countries in on a piece of the action. We're going to cut the president in on a hotel. We're basically going to have everybody making money on killing these people and taking their stuff. And there's a wonderful article that someone published last year that we keep bringing back. It's called Gaza is a Method. And it's what it was saying is, look, you've used the Palestinians to prototype the 15-minute cities. And now you're using them to prototype the land grab. And if we let this happen, it's going to come, this is not going to stop here. If we let this go down, it's going to keep happening around the world, because this is not a one-off situation. This is a prototype. And that's why the Palantir technology is relevant. So I think the most important thing that is happening is will the world let this happen?
In Palestine.
Yeah.
In Gaza.
Yeah. Because the message is going to be, okay, if you look at how we're controlling and you look at how we're propagandizing or we're mind controlling, we can now get away with this. And if we can now get away with this, then we can roll this out worldwide.